Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Cabrillo Unified School District Governing Board. Today is November 7th, 2019. Welcome, everybody. So we're here reconvening items 5. We will go with the, actually, I have to report the action from the closed session if applicable. Tonight it is applicable. The governing board met in closed session from 6:01 to 6:56 p.m. and took the following action. Under student matters number 01-1920, the governing board voted 4-0 to suspend the expulsion recommendation for a Cabrillo Unified School District student for the fall 2019 semester. The student will be eligible for readmission to the district for the spring 2019 semester, contingent on the successful completion of the rehabilitation plan. So we'll go to item number 6, Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody, please stand. Yes, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Maria Beth. A quick correction on the closed session action that was taken. It's the spring 2020 semester. Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Second? Please, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Okay. Item 8. Student staff community recognition. Seeing as there is none, we'll move to item 9. Comments from the public related to items not in this agenda. So we have 2 of these tonight. So first I'll call to the podium Eric DeBode, please. So I think as Eric's making his way up, I'll just remind folks of the process and procedures. We typically allow around 3 minutes for folks from the public to come and give comments on items not related to the agenda during this time of public comment. And by law, as we are not agendizing this comment, we're not allowed to have a conversation or respond. So typically the staff would follow up in due course as appropriate. Okay. So with that, Mr. DeBode.
Thank you very much. So my name is Eric DeBode. I'm the Executive Director of Abundant Grace Co-Site Worker. And I'm here tonight to open a conversation with any of you if you would like to have one in the coming weeks. Abundant Grace is in the process of purchasing the old Senior Co-Siters thrift store, and we are going to do some renovations on the inside and turn it into a workforce development center. Currently, we don't have a place to have our offices, so we'll have office space there, and it'll be a gathering place where we will stage our employment programming, which is with the homeless community. I don't have the plans tonight, but the drawings show we'll be fencing off the front of the property and renovating and landscaping the rear of the property, and that will be the primary gathering place for people. We will have Life Moves social workers in one of the office spaces to do case management with people. And then we will be taking people to our employment program for the Co-Site Clean Team, cleaning up the beaches and coastal trails, as well as our farm program at Potrero Nuevo Farm. I anticipate that we'll begin around 7 in the morning, and at least at the beginning I think we'll close fairly early, and then just open at the end of the workday when we get back for people to gather their items and go home. It is not going to be an overnight shelter. It will be closed at night and secured. And we will have staff on site whenever we're open, and we'll be keeping an eye on the perimeter of the space. I say that because I know it's a location that's on the path that many students walk to school, or they come to the More for Less gas station to get food and drinks, and then they head over to school. We have been meeting actually at More for Less for the last 4 years. We've been gathering there with a group of anywhere from 5 to 12 sometimes even more, but usually it's not that large. We only take 5 people to the coastside clean team and 12 people to the farm. We don't anticipate enlarging those numbers at all. But so I want to let you know we're looking at that space. We want to have conversations with you and address any concerns and make any adjustments with our programming so that the community feels safe and everyone feels respected and attended to. So.
Thank you.
Okay. You can go to our website, Abundant Grace. Just Google Abundant Grace Coastside Worker. We do have a video on there for you to see the type of work that we do and hear some of the success stories and part of our vision. You'll get to know it a little better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. All right, second comment during this time is from Riley Mills.
Good evening, Board. My name is Riley, and I attend Half Moon Bay High School. I want to shout out the many gifted teachers that are available to students on the coast. A good teacher is one of the most beneficial things that a student can have access to. Quality teachers know that students are the future of our nation. Without all the amazing teachers we have at our local schools, many students wouldn't have the support to mature into thriving adults. When I was little, I really didn't realize the impact that my teachers had on me. As I got older, I grasped the fact that the things these people teach you stay with you for the rest of your life. Looking back, many of my teachers were significant role models that inspired me to be the person I am today. The teachers we have here connect to students on a personal level, making classrooms a more comfortable environment. I am so grateful for the opportunities I had growing up and the ones that are still coming. I thank my teachers for all the knowledge that they have passed on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Riley. With that, we move to item number 10, representative reports. We'll start with CUTA.
Superintendent McFetridge, President Lane, administrative leadership, and board members. My name is Sean Reardon. I'm the lead negotiator of the Cabrillo Unified Teachers Association.
Sorry, my kids got set off.
That's okay. Well, I'd like to thank the voters of the Coastside for their strong support of Measure I. I'm proud to work in a school district where there is an understanding that to support public education, we need to pass local bond measures and parcel taxes. It's a deeply flawed educational funding system, and there's just no other source of funding for these to keep the buildings in good repair and to keep our teachers compensated. The community has backed Cabrillo Unified in the past 2 elections, and it's time to show the voters the results of their financial support for our district. Measure I reads, to maintain quality education in coastside schools without raising taxes, preserve strong academic programs in reading, writing, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, retain qualified teachers and staff, prepare its students for college and careers. There's a little bit more, but I'll leave it. It is clear that a main intention of Measure C is to retain qualified teachers and staff. Here is a way to do it. Increase our compensation. You owe it to the voters to increase the compensation. I'm looking forward to meeting on December 11th, and we can show the voters the results of their passage of Measure I. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean, and good evening, board. I just want to say I'm so moved with the turnout today. I know everybody in this room worked incredibly hard on Measure I, and thankfully everybody turned out and the vote is clear. But I want to echo what Sean had to say. That Measure I work that we did, we personally did, as well as the community, it was for the classroom, it was for teachers, and we really want to see it pushed to that. Many teachers are still working 2 jobs to try and make ends meet around here. Teachers come in early, they stay late, they work weekends. You go to any school site in this district and you will find that out. They're supporting students during their lunches. They're not supposed to do that, but they do because that's how dedicated they are to their students and the success of the school district. We want that success reciprocated. So we look forward to December 11th. Thank you. Oh, and Sean, Ramon is, speaking of working long hours, he's in conferences at Cunha, and he will be here later. So I want to make sure you guys knew that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean and Heidi. Okay, do we have a representative from CSEA? Stig, making his way. We'll wait, it's okay.
Good evening, board, superintendent, and administrative staff. And so my name is Stig Lynn. I'm here and representing CSEA. We are the classified people in our schools here. We are the one who sees so the computer works and makes sure the classroom are clean, that the kids get fed, and the buses get driven to your kids to school. And I want to also thank everyone who works really hard for Measure I. It was absolutely necessary that we could continue to do that. And we have encouraged all our members to vote yes on that too. We know it's going to be tough times coming ahead. The Measure I is not going to help. This has been an ongoing thing for many years. Last time we had these big cuts and things was 10 years ago when I started working here. I've been through it before. It's nothing I really look forward to. And I just can say to the board and to the superintendent that we hope that the staff who gets affected by layoffs, that if there are any new position, that these people get employed in other positions, so we don't lose good people here on the coast. And we all need a raise. We can say that too. Many of our members work 2-3 jobs. It's really hard to go and work in this community and survive with the rents and everything. That's all I want to say for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stig. Item 11, reports, information, and presentations. 11A, received demographers enrollment study report. Sean.
As far as the demographers report, I do want to introduce Tom Williams, who is here tonight. Tom has done a lot of this work over the years, particularly in San Mateo County, as I understand, but other places.
Santa Clara County, yes.
Santa Clara County. So with no further ado, I want to welcome Tom Williams to present the demographers enrollment study report.
I'll start by saying, there is one slide in the show demonstrates that throughout what I'll call the greater Silicon Valley area, particularly lower grade enrollments have been going down in just about every district that doesn't have thousands of new housing units going in. In several of my clients, like Evergreen, they're off over 4,000 students in the last 7 or 8 years. Cabrillo's down more than 2,000 kids in the last 4 years. Some districts have had, it almost doesn't matter what income level you're talking about. Even Hillsboro's losing kids right now. So no matter what income level these districts are in, relative to what they were at 5 years ago, it's harder for families to live in those neighborhoods, particularly young families. And so what I can present to you is not something at all unique to this district. In some cases, what I'm presenting to you is not nearly as bleak as what I'm finding in a lot of districts right now. Palo Alto has lost 1 in every 8 kindergartners in the last 4 years. I mean, some of the numbers of what's going on in the lower grades are just scary because of the price of housing throughout the greater region. And on that cheery note, I'll go to the key findings. I don't know if people can read that in the back, so I'll read it out loud. This is in the first page of the report. Enrollment in the Cabrillo Unified School District, as in most other districts in the county, has been declining in the lower grades in recent years with no indication to the date of a major future turnaround in the elementary or overall totals. And again, this is true just about in every district I work with, other than those that have a lot of new housing going in. Your district's elementary enrollment has declined by more than 300 students, or close to 20% in the last 6 years. That's the equivalent of 1 in every 5 kindergartners gone in the last 6 years. The local birth data suggests that these lower per grade amounts, on average, will continue at the elementary level. Note that I say continue. The data is not saying to go down even more, which is a much better thing I can say here than most districts. I have some zip codes where the births are off 20 to 25% from what are already very low kindergarten numbers. Nonetheless, we're talking about maintaining the current lower level. We're not talking about going back up to where you were more than 5 years ago. These lower amounts in the elementary grades also are starting to graduate into the secondary grades. Future housing will not alter these overall lower enrollment trends, but there is one possible development that could add notably to the enrollment for one of the elementary schools. Even with that project, the elementary total will go below 1,200 and then remain under 1,200 for the foreseeable future. I can say that with certainty. It's quite possible you go below 1,100, but you're definitely going and staying under 1,200 at the elementary level. Okay, for those of you that can't read this table, this is comparing what happened in each of the TK2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and TK12 totals. The reason I broke it out into essentially 3 grade groups of TK2, 3, 5, 6, 8 is so you can see how 3 grades of students advanced over 3 years. But if you look at the rightmost column, first of all, your TK12 total, back in 1999 it was over 3,800. By 2004 it was down to just about 3,500. From 2009 through 2015 it was in the 3,300s, already up by 500 from 1999. In 2016, it went below 3,200 for the first time, and you're now all the way down to barely over 3,100. That's up over 700 in the last 20 years, and off a little bit over 240 in the last 6 years. When I focus on where this is happening, you'll see that it peaked in 2014 at 30, within the last 6 years, and been going down steadily since then. The same thing in TK2. And within the last 6 years, that's that grayed out 2015 in the leftmost data column, you had a high number of 815 in 2013 in K2, you're now down to 626. Think about that for a second. That's off 189 students, or 23% in 6 years in TK2. And the most important thing to note about that is, or one of the main important things about that is, in 2013, it was actually just K2. It only represented 36 birth months. TK2 now represents 39 birth months. So we're off by 23% despite adding 3 birth months to that data. That's how severe things are going. Again, this is not unique to your district. With that bubble that we had in 2013 and 2015, especially a high number in 2nd grade, a year later in 2014, we reached the peak within the last 6 years in 3.5. And 3 years after that, 2 years after that, in 2016, we reached the peak in 6.8. That's the 795. And then that big bubble that was in 6.8 3 years ago is now in the high school grades. So we have the largest number in the high school grades in the last 6 years right now. But that's going to graduate out in the next 4 years. You've got the biggest number now graduating out, the bubble having moved through, and small numbers coming in. I don't think even smaller numbers, but still small numbers at that lower 600s level going out. So going forward, instead of in the past, and all those years on the top being in the 800s, and all your years in the future, you're going to be in the 600s, and probably the low 600s. So when you look at the overall total, you're only down by 7.2%, but that's because that bubble is now in the high school grades. In the lower grades, you're off by 23% in TK2 and 17% in 3.5. And no sign at all that that's going to rebound. Here's what I was talking about at the start. This shows what's going on county-wide in the TK5 numbers. From 1993 to 1999, the numbers soared. Then we had the dot-com crash, and things came down. A lot of people moved out. Jobs were just getting scarce. By 2005, we turned around. Even with the recession in 2009, because the employment in the Bay Area relative to the rest of the country was much better, we still had rising TK5 numbers. Even though the employment has remained good, in 2013 is when the housing prices really started to take off. When the housing prices really started to take off, everything did a U-turn. And the TK5 numbers have started collapsing. And you'll see it's an accelerated collapsing rate, and based on the latest birth rate numbers county-wide, it's going to be even worse in the immediate future. Specific to the 4 zip codes that are entirely in this district, 94018, 94019, 94037, and 94038, I'm ignoring Senator because of nuances in that data. I'm ignoring up on Kings Mountain because that's mostly the Redwood City zip code. But for the 4 zip codes that are entirely in this district, When I look back on the births of prorated to fall 2007 kindergarten, it was in the 300s. It stayed in the 300s through the fall of 2014. All those top 7, 8 numbers are in the 300s for what the births suggested for a kindergarten. Then starting in 2015, it dropped to 272, then 250, then all the way down to 231 relative to the current kindergarten. That's going from the 300s to the low 200s. That's a huge statistical decline. As I said, the one moderately positive number is the birth numbers relevant to the next 4 kindergartens are a little bit higher than the birth numbers relevant to the current kindergartens. Nonetheless, the average for the birth numbers for the next 4 years is off by 24% from the average for the first 8 years in that table, or the equivalent of 1 in every 4 kindergartners. When I look at where your kids are living, comparing the fall 2016 to fall 2019 data, and using some subjective basis to say who's coming from the more affordable housing, the more moderate housing, the more expensive housing in the district, by the various attendance areas, this is where the kids live, not the schools they necessarily attend. There's some interesting findings that came out. In the top, you'll see the Fairlawn View core area, which I mean everything but Moon Ridge. And in that area on the right side, you'll see that the total number of elementary students in that attendance area in that 3-year period only went down by 4, or 2%. But at Moon Ridge, it went down by 33, or 27%. So the big reason the numbers went down in Fairlawn View attendance area was entirely Moon Ridge. When we get in the El Granada core area, they are down by 40 students, or 10%, over the last 3 years. But then when I get down into the Highway 92 and South Main Street areas, with a much smaller student population, they're off by 49 students, or 26%. And if you look at the leftmost data column, you'll see that in what I call the affordable housing in that area is off by 33%. So again, the main place your enrollment has been collapsing in the last 3 years has been the more affordable housing in the district. And the Hatch attendance rate at the bottom, you'll see are down by 29 students, or 7%. So it's each of the main areas that aren't the more affordable housing have done relatively well in the last 3 years. The places with the more affordable housing have had a significant drop-off. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Kings Mountain. Kings Mountain attendance area, for the students living in that attendance area, enrolled in any district in this school, any school in this district, was 26 students in 2016, and it's 16 students now. 2/3 of the students enrolled in the Kings Mountain School this year are coming from outside of that attendance area. But the number of students you have enrolled from within the Kings Mountain attendance area is 16 right now. That's off 38%, but that's kind of silly because it's such a small number. It exaggerates the percents. So I'm looking for the resident total for the district, which is essentially the same thing as the enrollment. The only difference is I'm not including the very few incoming inter-district kids you get, teachers' kids coming over the hill or whatever from Pacifica. Again, if you look at the bottom row, you'll see that in the affordable category, you're off 20%. In the moderate and high-value categories, you're off 5 to 8%. Again, the big hit is happening in the more affordable housing. And those people are the ones that are most susceptible to increases in housing costs and job availability issues, including, most recently, the Bay City Flowers closure. Okay, this compares where the kids are enrolled to where they live. These are your kids. This has nothing to do with private schools. This is your kids compared to the school let's go to. In Fairlawn View's case, if you see the rightmost column, you have a net outflow of 29 students from that attendance area to other schools. That's a net number, not a gross number. Where it gets significant is in El Granada, they have 150 going out, and Hatch has 150 coming in. El Granada actually has more students, significantly more students living in its attendance area than Hatch does. The numbers get flipped for enrollment because of that intra-district flow. Does that make sense to everybody? And then, then again, there's Kings Mountain with 34 coming in from outside its attendance area. At the very bottom, I just want to point out the counts by grade for the resident students or the attendance, take your pick. We got 212 in 4th and 212 in 5th, and we got 169 in K. That shows how the last of the bubble is going out. The next 2 years, you're probably going to have another number in the 160s or 170s, maybe 180 at best, come in, and you're going to lose 212 classes. You're still going down. That's why I'm confident you're going below 1,200 and staying below 1,200. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, to talk about new housing. Within this district, you had one development recently built. That's the Upper Terrace Avenue development with 19 new homes. You had a total of 3 kids coming out of those 19 homes enrolled in district schools, and they're all in high school grades. It has not made a major difference in the enrollment in the elementary schools in this district. That, again, is not an unusual finding. The price of single-family detached homes is so high, the families with kids that move into them will already be in the secondary grades. Now, this is an extreme case because it's so few units. I'm sure if I had 100 units there, I have a couple kids in TK5, but nonetheless, you get the point. New to single-family detached homes at market rate are not generating elementary kids because the price is just too high. Now, when I talk about market rate attached developments, that's condos, apartments, townhouses, and plexes. There's no recent sample to use in this district, so I looked over the hill in the San Mateo Foster City District with some neighborhoods that aren't all that different from your neighborhoods. Admittedly, it's more expensive over the hill, but at least it gives us a sense. They have had over 1,600 units built in the last 3 years in market rate housing developments, and they're averaging essentially 1 student every 8 units. And I think that's a reasonable thing to apply to your future developments. The problem is next to nothing is getting built. If we had a significant attached housing development coming in, then we'd be talking better kids, but we don't, and there's none obviously in the pipeline. And the last one is the below market rate attached housing developments. Since what Mid-Peninsula Housing is proposing to build is not all that different from Moon Ridge, I looked at the Moon Ridge yield, even though it's a much older development, it is averaging 1.6 students per unit at Moon Ridge. That is an extraordinarily high yield for even below market rate housing. Usually it's under 1. So clearly, any more developments built by Mid-Peninsula Housing would generate students for your district. The issue with that is they have one 70-unit proposal in the process for Moss Beach that would probably generate something like 60 elementary kids, maybe 50 to 60, if it gets built. It's very iffy. It's probably at least 4 to 5 years out, maybe more, and may never occur. And especially with Bay City Flowers closure and probably some space opening up at Moon Ridge as a result, that may cause them to delay the project at Moss Beach as well. The bottom line is that's the only development I'm seeing that will make a major difference for your enrollment, and that's not going to be enough to offset the district-wide trends otherwise. So the conclusion, the total CUSD enrollment will continue to decline, with losses shifting from being almost solely in the elementary grades in recent years to occurring in all 3 grade levels in the pending years. There are indications, including from both the local birth data and the current student distribution through grades TK5, the degree of average annual student reduction will be less the next few years than occurred recently. That's the degree. You're not going to have another 300 in the next 5 years, but you're still going down. The TK total still will fall from the current 1,258 below 1,200 and potentially under 1,100 in the near future. I think it's better than 50-50 odds you're going below 1,100. The long-run outlook is for fewer than 1,200 as well, and that's including that Mid-Penn housing project in Moss Beach. If that Mid-Penn housing project in Moss Beach isn't built, you're probably going under 1,100. This compared to elementary totals were significantly above 1,500 prior to 2015. Now, as sad as that is, I would say the majority of my clients are worse in terms of where the numbers are going. I have districts that are talking closing 3 to 4 schools in several locations. And it all depends on what you can afford. If you're at Hillsborough, they can afford to run schools with 300 kids because they've got $20,000 per kid. So it just depends on what your budget is, what you can handle. But I will note that having 1,100 kids with 4 elementaries is far more elementaries than in virtually any district I know of with that many kids. Questions?
I wish I had some questions.
Are you sure?
Are you sure?
If, by some miracle, somehow they could get through a 300 unit of attached housing development, that would help. But I just don't see any way that's happening in the current situation.
Any questions or comments from anybody? I'm just going to make a comment, and that is to thank Sean and his team for bringing you on board. I come from a background where I thrive and enjoy and appreciate data, as probably everyone who knows me knows. And the rigor of this, I don't say this a lot, but the rigor of this work is excellent and so incredibly informative for us in terms of the decision-making that we have, to make just on many different levels from facilities and beyond. To be able to look at real data from a professional that's clearly has a lot of experience with the outside trends as well. I think that's very incredibly helpful and really essential for us in terms of how we do our work, that we do it in an informed way. So thank you to Sean for bringing you on board. Thank you for doing this work for us. It's a lot to digest, and I know I will be continuing to process it for the next several weeks and months, and already have spent a lot of time on it, but incredibly rigorous, incredibly helpful and informative. So I just want to say a comment to say thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Great, thank you. Okay.
I don't have a question for Tom. I think the data speaks for itself, but I do want to just remind the public and the board, we did pull Tom in particularly because we are updating our facilities master plan, and we're looking at how the bond would be used to rebuild and modernize schools. I would say that for me, the bottom line of this is that the public and the board, all of us need to understand that the district is changing demographically. Because of a resistance to build housing and a difficulty to build housing that is affordable, we are losing students, and we will need to right-size the district. We will need to right-size the district with our budget. We will need to right-size the district with our facilities. We will need to right-size the district at our schools with their capacities. We will need to right-size our district with our staffing. And if it's not this coming year, because of the budget cuts we have to make now, it will be in years ahead. And so hopefully this is data that will be provided to you and that you will be reminded of, and that we will continue to update so that we can describe what the coast side will look like in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, and on.
Thank you very much, Tom and Sean. Okay, so with that, we go to item 11B. Excuse me. Receive Half Moon Bay High School Agriculture and Natural Resources Department Course of Study and 2019 to 2024 5-year plan presentation.
Good evening, President Lane, board members, community members. Here we have today our Half Moon Bay High School Principal John Nazar and CT Coordinator Diane Santoni, and also two of our amazing ag teachers to come to you, to students, sorry. Apologize. In the future. We're grooming our students for our teaching pathway, okay? And so we have here our team to present to you Agricultural Natural Resources Department Course of Study, as well as present to you our 5-year ag plan.
All right, thank you, board members and Dr. McFetridge. This is a pleasure. I'm going to just very briefly introduce this. Our agriculture department, along with the ag boosters, the ag board, our teachers, and people in this community that really value agriculture and its part in the educational system here in Half Moon Bay and in Cabrillo Unified, have really been looking really hard and long-term on how to build a program that is long-term sustainable, that is relevant to the students that we're having, and of course relevant to the agriculture that can be and will be viable here on the coast in the next number of years, and hopefully for many years to come. I do really appreciate the lot of hard work of Diane Santoni, who, just so you know, is a retired teacher, ag teacher, and was an administrator for CTE programs in the East Bay, and had retired. And when our ag teacher a year ago left, she stepped in, taught our ag classes, sustained the program, and now has really dedicated herself to making sure that we have a long-term, sustainable, and really viable vision for that department. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane Santoni, who has done so much work and who is leading the coordination of our CTE programs through grants that we've received from the state of California. So Diane?
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here to present our course of study and our strategic 5-year plan for the agriculture program and to request your approval. I would like to introduce two of our officers that have been in the program for a while. Yulissa Ramirez is our chapter president for FFA, and Danielle Daly is our vice president. I would also like money to waive our five-year plan came out of the foresight of our strong industry partners and industry community here on the coast side. They had the foresight to see the challenges and the trends and said we need a strategic plan to sustain this program and hopefully grow it. So if you just want to, there's a few of you here that have been working very hard. There's some sitting down also on the strategic plan. So thank you for being here. So, clicker. So anyway, along with this strategic plan, it has already helped us. We've already completed some of our goals. And it was developed first by the Ag Boosters through a series of meetings last year based on past experience. And then it went to our employer advisory group. We have a really strong advisory group that we initiated this year. And they went through the plan, they went through the course of study, they looked at what students need to know and be able to do to be successful, and approved the plan to move it forward to you with the hope that you will approve it. So when I was asked to do this presentation, I was also asked to do a brief historical overview, sharing some of the challenges and some of the strengths of the program, and also to go over some of the recent enrollment trends. I'm going to try to do this quickly. You have it in your packet, and for the essence of time, you're going to see me skip over some things, but feel free to ask questions at the end or later. You're welcome to meet with any of us to discuss the program further. So as far as an overview, we're really excited that we've been preparing students for success at this high school for well over 75 years. It's a very long, sustained program. Part of that is we've had a long tradition of strong industry and community support, which is evidenced in part in this five-year plan. One of the things we've seen is the course of study has changed over time. Part of that is good because when you deal with career technical education, survival is change. You need to look at industry market changes. You need to really be receptive to changing what our students are learning so they can succeed in that industry. But also one of the reasons we've seen the curriculum change and the course of study change is because of our massive turnover of teachers. In the last 11 years alone, we have seen 5 teachers cross our paths. So that is one of the reasons why we developed the strategic plan, is how do we have a sustainable course of study that meets the needs of our students and our industry when we have this revolving door of teachers. So how do we recruit and retain teachers? And also one of the changes that we've seen is an increase in standard-based instruction, which has really supported the program. We have career technical model curriculum standards that include transferable soft skills, anchor academic core skills, and industry standards. And we are also have integrated and aligned the next generation science standards. And I want to say an added strength to the program is we are unique in Cabrillo Unified. I would say throughout the state, I hear this time and time again, the shock of how well the Ag Science program collaborates with our science program. That's very unusual, and that has strengthened the program with this K-12 collaboration that's going on with the science program. So just quickly on enrollment data, there's this, what I wanted to do was look at, okay, our students graduated in June of 2019. Let's look at what that cohort looked like 4 years ago. So the 15-16 enrollment in Ag was 141, and at the end of June, 148. So you can see there is a consistent enrollment within the program. We did have a peak in, that should be September of 2019, in the green at the beginning of the year. That's where we didn't have a teacher, but we had a teacher, and the program was starting to grow, and then we lost our teacher again. So the dip in October of 2019 beginning is indicative of that. The students didn't know who their teacher was going to be and what their program was going to be. It was also indicative of the fact that we added our capstone class, which is exciting. We finally have a culminating capstone class that will help with our dashboard for our college and career readiness. So that's a brand new class that the board has approved that started this year. Unfortunately, we had to offer it 7th period, and that's a senior class, and that does not work well for students. So we had a number of students drop when they saw it at that 7th period mark. I am confident, based on the positive energy around that ag program right now and what you feel from the students and the energetic teachers, that you're going to see a big jump in that number next year. So another thing that I'm always interested in is what are our students doing after they leave? So what are our successes after high school? So just real quickly, this is using the standards for mandated federal and state data reporting. So just in October of 2019, of the students who completed 3 years of ag, 88% responded to this survey, and we had a 100% placement rate in both years. That's amazing. Another key thing that I want to highlight is that 40% of those kids went on to a 4-year college, and every single one of them went into an ag major, which indicates that the ag program is helping kids get to college and choose their career early. So there's other data there too. So the ag program has 3 major components. It's a school-based ag program, but it has 3 major components. We have classroom and lab instruction. We also have the FFA, which we're excited that we have our charter here. Our charter was signed by those students that were in ag in 1945, October. So we will be celebrating 75 years of FFA here on the coast side at Half Moon Bay High School. So the FFA is integral to the curriculum. It's not a club. It's not extracurricular. It promotes personal growth and success through adult engagement with mentors. There's data from Harvard on what high schools at work, and that data indicates that the #1 factor for student success is having adult role models. And so FFA is one way to be able to do that. This is one of our mentors. We have a couple mentors that are having the students learn about farm power and mechanics and tractor skills after school. So that's just one example. Leadership is a primary part of FFA and our curriculum. And we have students that have said, I know part of it's raising animals if you want to do that and raising crops, but I want to do this for leadership. This is one of our students that I have heard say that over and over and over again is, I love the fact that I can learn about leadership and practice leadership. So there's a lot of ways that students do that. They do public speaking, parliamentary procedure. They have meetings at least every month, so they learn about that type of organization. They do community service. They attend conferences, competitions. Last year, these group of novice students entered into the opening and closing meeting ceremonies and were 3rd place. And then we have the 3rd component is our supervised ag experience projects, or we call them SAEs. It doesn't have to be raising animals, but it could be. It could be raising crops, plants, doing enterprise projects with students. Students can do research projects. They have to have a business plan. They have to do record keeping. So they have to show results. And so that's just one example. So to our 5-year plan, basically you have it in your packets. There's a lot of detail to it, so I'm not going to go over that. But our primary goal was that we want a sustainable program. It's been here for over 75 years. We have a lot of people that went through the program that are working in the industry now. I run into them every day, and they're working even outside of the area. And we want our students to thrive. So there are 3 main goals to this strategic plan. One is to offer a high-quality ag program of study that meets our student and industry needs. And so we actually have completed phase 1. Phase 1 was we need a strong sequence of courses. And so we have established that. The board has approved those, and like I said, we just started our capstone course this year, which will help with our college and career readiness dashboard. Our second phase is we want to work on getting paid and non-paid internships for our students, and we have industry partners who are interested in doing that. This is our course of study. You're familiar with it. The middle ones in blue are our pathway, and they're all fulfill the CSU and UC admission requirements. The bottom three are D Lab, and we will be working on D Lab credit rather than G for the intro class. And again, it ties right in with our science program. We work closely with science, share resources, and have built a program that's flexible for students to go where they need to go, to move back and forth into those programs. But we are also looking at expanding, not immediately, but expanding into another pathway that could go into, for example, ornamental horticulture, and then have a fourth year with an internship. The second goal, I would say, was our primary goal, was to recruit and retain high-quality teachers. So you've been talking about that today, hearing about the importance of recruitment and retention. And we know that being strategic and figuring out ways to sustain teachers to make this job easy so they can do what they love doing. So I'm just going to give you one example. The district approved a supervised ag experience supervision period that started this year. With that, we have an ag incentive grant. So that ag incentive grant, by checking that off and providing that for the teacher, we get an additional $2,000. It's the intent of the legislature to have an extended 12-month contract for our ag teachers, because ag doesn't end at the end of school. Kids have projects, kids have animals, and they need supervision. So through, again, grant funding, we were able to extend that contract this year and successfully recruit an awesome teacher. And again, we get another $2,000 for doing that. It's not just, it doesn't end there. That $4,000 for those two things we're able to use as a match, and we have been writing additional grants, and that match, that $4,000 translates to $2,000 in another grant. So every single dollar that we put into these CTE programs, there are a variety of grants that will provide at least $1 for every $2 that we invest. Okay, so the third goal was to provide high-quality industry-standard instructional materials, equipment, and facilities. With a Career Tech Education grant, we were able to complete phase 1. We had greenhouses. We lost our ag farm down below by the baseball field a number of years ago because of the housing development moving in. And so we lost the animal part of that, and we moved our greenhouses up on top. They basically have not been functional for some time. The kids get excited about growing plants, and then the animals just eat them. So it's amazing how quickly that happens. I was like, we can grow plants, and yeah. So phase 1 was to do repair. Actually, the students got the vents working, add bird netting, put on siding, and then we have a second phase that's going to start in a couple weeks with a second round of the grant on irrigation. We also have a grant where we were able to get 2 vehicles so that we can take kids to conferences and do our ag projects. So this is just an example. This is my last slide. This is what one of the greenhouses looked like. 2 of them, actually, after the winds. The larger greenhouse, a lot of the brittle siding blew out. And because of the students actually helping with the prep work and helping tear off the siding, we were able to save money on the project. We had community members that discounted some of the work, like for the concrete. The Farm Bureau, we weren't meeting the budget, and I was afraid that we weren't going to complete this project, and the Farm Bureau came in and provided some funding. So through everybody's combined effort, we were able to have these 2 greenhouses that the students are going to be able to do their projects in. So with that, I'm going to end and ask if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Just a comment. Thank you so much for coming and speaking and presenting this, and for the hard work that you all have been doing on this program. It's very exciting, and I'm glad to hear that that capstone course is there. I was excited about the second course that you were talking about, set of courses. I'm wondering if there's any kind of timeline on that, and if there's additional funding from CTE to help implement
There is.
those?
So I believe our timeline in the plan is 2 years from now to hopefully start that second pathway. We actually have 1.2 teachers. We were able to recruit a part-time teacher, which is almost impossible in our economy here. To take a person who works in industry and help her get her designated subject credential, that's an ag credential based on her industry experience, and so she's doing a 20% at one period. So that's helping us complete our whole pathway with that capstone. And from there, being able to have teachers that can begin part-time and then grow the program will help us get to that second pathway. The Career Tech Education Incentive Grant does provide for paying for teachers. We can't supplant what the district is to provide, but if it's an addition, we can use that grant funding. The only caveat is we need matching funds to be able to have enough sufficient funds to be able to do that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question, and I just saw, I may just answered my own question, but I'm correct in, so one of your goals is also to extend it to the middle school. Currently, it's just the high school.
Right. Currently, it's at the high school. There is some agriculture going on at Pilarcitos here. And we have actually a student that is going back and forth with that, so that that student can be involved in FFA also. But yes, we would like to get more career tech ed down at the middle school and have a feeder. So looking at facilities and ways to do that, and having this model to take people from industry and help them get their credential, so that if they need to work part-time in industry and part-time teaching, we can start building those programs.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for your leadership. I think it sounds like, such a tremendous experience for our kids to have the hands-on learning for careers that are there and they can then employ and help lead kind of innovation in that space. And that to not only have that experience, like that hands-on functional experience, but the leadership experience, as you said, and the mentoring experiences that they have through this program, I think is just really, really great. And I like the grants part too, so that's a really nice bonus. So I hope you guys are enjoying it, and thank you for your leadership as well.
Thank you.
Just to make one last comment, thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for showing us how career technical education is also not just career preparation, but college preparation, with all these classes being UCA-to-G approved, and with actual Foothill College credit being given for the capstone also, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to item 11C, review financial overview update and approve the FICMAT contract. Just want to remind folks of our process here, because I have a stack. Some of you know you're on this list, on this list. So our process is that we have staff give the presentation, and then we'll go through to the best of our ability in the order that they were received as we got them. So we'll do that after the presentation from staff, and then we'll have our discussion after that. And typically, we often in the past have asked folks to consolidate when there are many people, but because of the nature of this topic, I'm going to just allow everybody to speak. But again, the reminder is, as we mentioned with the public comment earlier, just please aim for 3 minutes or less. And if you want to consolidate, that's okay. Not say you can't, just say we won't push it. All right, so with that, Dr. McFetrich.
Thank you so much, members of the board, members of the public. I've been around in the district now since July, and I've been to a lot of parent-teacher organization meetings and been speaking in the public on this issue. And we've had these financial overview updates at board meetings, and we've had this funnel approach where we talked about the problem, we talked about the themes, what we would be looking for cuts, we gave information about schools, and then we had the concern basically upon us about the ambiguity about whether or not we would pass the parcel tax. First of all, I want to thank the community for what appears to be the passage of Measure I, with 75%, 74% of voters having voted yes. it looks like we have the required supermajority of votes that is required for passage of our renewal parcel tax, which represents $1.6 million. Certainly, we thank the voters of the Coast Side for their support of their schools and their students, but I also want to thank the community members who served on Measure I Parcel Tax Committee in particular and gave of their time to help communicate to the public the need for these funds to continue operations in Cabrillo Unified School District. While we have much to be thankful for, because Measure I seems to have prevailed, we also know there's a lot of work ahead because we must still cut between $1.75 and $2.5 million in order to remain solvent and retain local control of the school district. For those of you who don't understand this or haven't heard me talk about it, remaining solvent means we're able to pay our checks, we're able to pay our personnel. Retaining local control of the school district means we don't get taken over like Oakland did almost 20 years ago and they're still saddled with debt. Sacramento City, we're not alone. Sacramento City is currently battling this now too, and that's the state's capital. This is a very difficult time. In my October letter to the Cabrillo Unified School District community, I described the different reasons that Cabrillo and many other districts are suffering through what has been described as a silent recession. And this is why we are in the place we are in now. Tonight, there is this presentation on recommendations for potential budget cuts, but I also want to put this in perspective for the board and the public. Already, we can see with the passage of the parcel tax that the menu of potential cuts of $3.8 million, that's what we provided as a menu, exceeds what we need for solvency. Your menu is $3.8 million in cuts. How much do we need to cut? $2.5 million ostensibly to be in a positive certification and to no longer be in a qualified budget and no longer be at risk of insolvency. And with that said, I want to remind people we must prepare for the worst but plan for the best. There will be some cost-saving ideas described tonight that will keep us from having to make some cuts, and there may be even more cost savings we are able to determine in months ahead that will eliminate our need to make some of the potential cuts that are now recommended. Tonight, I will also propose that we rule out some of the recommended cuts because we know that we can do that with the passage of Measure I. Tonight, I will specifically recommend to the board that they rule out the consolidation of Granada and Fairlawn View elementary schools because it was included only as a recommendation if the parcel tax didn't pass. That said, you just heard Tom Williams here speaking on the demographer's report, and you know that over time we are going to get smaller as a district. And this problem is only going to be exacerbated unless funding at the state level increases or funding at the local level increases. There are some other potential budget cut recommendations I will recommend the board rule out as well. But I want to remind everyone that we will continue to work at restoring and reevaluating recommended cuts as our budget picture becomes more clear in months ahead. Remember, I always describe this as a whiplash moment. In January, the governor's budget proposal will come and there may be more money, or there may be new developments or new partnerships or new savings that we can make that will allow us to restore or reevaluate cuts that we have to make in December. While the board is not voting tonight on any budget cut recommendations, it is important to remember this will be an incremental and an iterative process that will require patience and strength. So, again, the objective of the presentation is to present a financial overview update with a list of potential budget cuts and savings required for board action in December of actionable cuts to stabilize district spending and maintain local control. I've shown this slide, I think 3 or 4 or 5 times now in various venues or in these board meetings. Basically, the decision maker is the Board of Education. The staff must make recommendations. We make a huge $3.8 million menu of cuts, and we did that as insurance in case the parcel tax did not prevail. Now we know that that $3.8 million menu really should go to $2.5 million. The board will decide in December. We will have this meeting. We will have another meeting in November for questions from the board. We've been gathering inputs. I've been meeting with bargaining group representatives and parent-teacher organizations. We've been talking to community groups. We've been talking to the county. Basically, these are staff presentations. The board will decide. Everybody needs to understand these are things we have to do to remain solvent. This is another sort of Gantt chart, timeline, whatever you want to call it. It shows you where we are in the process. In November, we are analyzing the parcel tax election results. A few minutes ago, I was on my phone checking to make sure it hadn't slipped. We have a preliminary report on short-term budget cuts ahead. And then in December, we decide and inform. And then in January through March, we have to do the hard work of laying people off. For our certificated staff, our teachers, administrators, that will require us noticing people and bringing the board news in February so we can notice them in March 15. And for our classified members, we have to give them between 45 and 60 days by contract and ed code. And then you'll see implementation and planning. We've talked about the principles of change and commitment to our basic responsibilities. We have to keep a core instructional focus. I think it was great for us to have that kind of really sobering moment with the demographer and then have that great moment with our ag science people, right? Yeah. That was a plus, right? And then you get right back to me again, so sorry. This is very much in the coast side a partnership between students, families, school, district, and community, and I very much appreciate how impassioned people are about this. We have to, as a district and as a community, I think, have a commitment to learn from the past and prepare for the future. You saw the ag science presentation do that. Here's where we were, here's where we are, this is where we want to be, right? And we have to be sensitive because, and I've said this a dozen times, but we have to say it 7 times in 7 different ways. You have to be sensitive because the budget cuts will personally impact employees and families that we know by name, and that we know may lose their jobs. When 80% of your personnel or 80% of your costs are in personnel, and when you have cuts of these magnitudes, you know people are going to lose their jobs. The good news is that we have a low joblessness rate, and the economy's pretty good for people right now if they want to get jobs. The bad news is we know people are going to be looking, and they will lose their jobs. So we have to have a commitment to empathy. I invite you to have empathy, to understand that this process will be messy, that this is an iterative process. The board doesn't want to do this. I really don't want to do this, but it's what we have to think about. We have to have a growth mindset. A colleague said to me recently, oh my gosh, the parcel tax isn't going to pass. I said, hey, that we can't think that. We have to think that it's going to pass, but we have to plan if it does not. We have to have open minds during the process. We can't say that was the way things were in the past, that's the way things always will be. We have to be open to change. Change is required of us now. We have to be data-driven, we have to be transparent, we have to be inclusive, and that's why we take questions from the public. We have fact-finding, analysis, decision-making ahead, and the consideration of the impacts that will result with budget cuts. Reminder, the board is not taking action tonight. They are listening. They will take action on one item. I want to remind everybody of this. One of the appendices is an agreement with Fiscal Crisis Management Assessment Team. Fiscal Crisis Management and Assistance Team. That group is a state group. We received a letter of lack of going concern from the County Office of Education saying, you're in the hole, you're in the red bad, you could go bankrupt, you could be insolvent. We need to see $2.5 million in cuts by December, or we could take you over. That letter is attached in your packet. I included it in the packet because it was recommended that I do so, but also because there were some people who said, it's not real, it's not happening. It's happening. The second appendix of this attachment was an agreement with the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team. These are the people that come in to look and comb through your budget and your staffing to say, this is where you're out of whack, this is where you need to cut. Those folks will be coming in next week. I will need the board to approve tonight, at the end of this meeting, their engagement. It will cost us nothing. The state has an allocation because they don't want us to be taken over. So they allocate us money to help us with this crisis. So that's the only action the board's taking tonight. And again, these cuts and savings are 1.75 to 2.5 million made in December, actionable cuts, because now we know that the parcel tax has prevailed. I think We probably not for 19 days, I think is what people would tell me. Thank you very much. It's looking very good. Okay. Again, tonight's presentation, we've talked about this before. This is the parking lot. There are some things that are out of scope for our discussion. CUTA, our Teachers Association, and CSEA, our Classified Association, those contracts would have to be negotiated. Class sizes, employee work days, calendar changes, salaries and benefits. That's outside of our scope of discussion. We will be going to tables, negotiation tables, but that's not for here. Changes in elementary school area boundaries, graduation requirements. I mean, one way to save money would be you would take the number of graduation requirements down and kids could graduate earlier. But that's a longer discussion. And strategies to increase enrollment would also need further unpacking. Restricted funds, preschool monies, adult school monies, construction funds, the bond monies. Unless there are opportunities for us to shift costs from the general fund so we can save money, and I'm going to give you a couple of those ideas, you're not going to get a lot of that tonight. Sale and lease of capital assets, surplus real estate, that requires more time, but I can tell you that we have surplus property we could sell to help save the district. But I think you also know that what Tom Williams, the demographer, just presented on is this tends to be, and if I can say it, a not in my backyard kind of community on the coast side. There's not a lot of ability to develop here because of the Coastal Commission and because people want to keep it small, right? But with that comes a lack of enrollment, which then means we have a lack of funding. But nonetheless, I will be exploring and will be presenting to this board a sale and lease of our excess property for use. And it will have to be a values clarification exercise for the community. If the community will not allow that to be built and new homes to be built, then you will deal with the circumstances and the consequences of that decision. Significant new revenue opportunities and partnerships with benefactors, and I just want to say our partners in Cabrillo Education Foundation, our partners in the Boys and Girls Club, our partners who are our parent-teacher organizations, our partners in the city of Half Moon Bay. I know I'm going to present next week with the Mid-Coast Council. All these agencies and partners, that's going to require more time, but I want you to know we are meeting with these folks. Student achievement is certainly the focus. These are the LCAP 4 core areas. These are the things that we will try to keep our eyes on as the prize. But nonetheless, these things too may wind up being impacted by the cuts that are required upon us now. I have said this before, I'll say it again. An enemy to system improvement is we've always done it that way. This district has some arrangements it can no longer afford. It's no fault of the district. It doesn't mean the arrangements are bad. It means we can't afford them anymore because the state doesn't fund us appropriately. And you've heard that from CUTA Representative Sean Reardon said that. The state funding is screwed up, and that screwed us up. We can be more cost effective using technology, doing software improvements, not dealing with software redundancies, solar energy investments, and I will talk about that later. There are some existing arrangements that we have to look at undoing or doing differently, and there are some initiatives ahead that could save us money. We showed this slide at the last one and the one before. This is our current budget. This shows the district office. This shows the employee benefits of the district office and all the sites. Those benefits are a great big part of our budget, and because those employee benefits, including pension contributions, because the state is making us pay those pension contributions, both our employees and the district, this is part of the problem. This is why we're in the silent recession we're in. The state changed the tune. The state played a shell game. In 2013, with the Public Employee Pension Reform Act, they saddled districts and employees with more money, and so we were passing raises and the employees didn't feel it, and we were cutting to make those raises because we also have to pay increased pension contributions, and that's not ending. We also have services and fees, and we will continue to look at that. Membership dues, software, budgets, consultants, unused technology, subcontracts, etc. So this is a list, the first list of the potential cuts and savings from the district office and district services. We had budgeted a director of categorical programs, and that position was not hired. That is already $155,000 in savings. We had a district custodial supervisor that was budgeted and hired in June, and then when that person got another job, we did not fill that position, and I told the principals, we're going back to the old way. You're going to supervise your own custodians. We have a district network specialist. Bless him, he retired. He was in this district a long time, made $105,000, and I told the director of technology, I'm so sorry, I'm not hiring him back. We have a freeze. We have a hiring freeze. That's attrition. I can't do it. We're not hiring him back. We have a district HR technician. This was on the list from before, from administrators before me. That would be a very difficult thing to withstand because that deals with employee benefits. And yet it is on the list, and I've kept it on the list. It'll be something that I will want us to try to avoid on this list. District transportation. We are talking about reducing busing in the district, except for students with individual education plans and special education. It would be 2 bus routes, 2 bus drivers, $130,000 in savings. Many districts no longer do busing, and it is one thing we are thinking about doing away with. We are looking at a school psychologist reduction, 1 school psychologist, so $100,000. We are looking at a reduction in force of 2 custodians. That would be $130,000. It would mean that your classrooms and your campuses were not as clean, but it is something we have to look at. There is currently a teacher who gets paid 1 period for district broadcasting, and they make films, and it's a nice to have. It is not a need to have. It's on the list. The district webmaster contract, we have a new district website. We would suspend that contract. That's $15,000. AXA dues have been paid. That's the Association of California School Administrators to administrators. That's a perk. It's a perk to retain our administrators, quite frankly, who have not received raises in the last year, while our teachers and certificated and classified staff did. Nonetheless, it's a perk that we would do away with. Summer cleaning contract would not be renewed. Last year there was a $62,000 summer cleaning contract that would not be renewed. We would have to have custodians schedule their vacations different times. We would have to make sure that the summer cleaning happened with our own people. Panorama contract, this is a school survey, that's a software. That's not renewed, $12,000. School loop contract. We can do that function now. That's a redundancy. School loop would be done instead by Infinite Campus. We would train our staff to do it that way. And that is a $17,000 third year contract. And unfortunately, that's also been offshored to a European company that doesn't really give us a lot of service or call us back anymore. Good reason to get rid of it. I was at Hatch, quite frankly, and I had a former employee there say, yeah, get done with them. Former employee of theirs. Charge for breakfast. We, F&R, just so you know, that's for free and reduced. In the nation, if you're eligible for free or reduced breakfast or meals, you get either a meal for free or you get a reduced price on a meal. In this district, for some years now, they've been giving breakfast to everyone. We have to change that. It's a nice to have, it's not a need to have. And although we'd like to give free breakfast to everyone, we save $20,000. And people may think, Sean, it's $20,000. Remember, $20,000 is 1% of a $2 million cut. You can bet I'm counting it up. Pay off district solar lease with a bond. When Measure S and Measure M were passed by this community, it was sold to the taxpayers that we would increase our energy efficiency. And we bought in a PPA, it's like a lease, solar for Cunha and Half Moon Bay High School. It is time we should use those bond funds as they were intended in the ballot language, and I will bring this at the next board meeting to this board, and we would hopefully spend $2.7 million out of the bond, and it would save us $100,000 out of operational costs every year. You can either be in an expensive lease, or you can make a smart business move. School-linked service contract reduced. This is about student wellness, and we had a contract, and we would look to hire more interns who need intern hours, and indeed we've already reduced that position. That position is an attrition. We're not going to replace it. That's $100,000. Lower dental vision insurance costs. In the past month, we've researched that we can provide our employees with the same dental and vision that they've had, but we can do it with another broker, and it's $60,000 less. It's not a cut, it's a savings. We're doing good business. Lower workers' comp insurance costs. The San Mateo County School Insurance Group, $80,000. They've just voted to leave a private company. They will cover their own workers' comp insurance costs. Many districts actually do this. They self-insure for workers' comp. That's an $80,000 savings for us next year. And finally, we are investigating a project currently that we could use bond money so that we could do water conservation, which would be good for the environment and would good for our bottom line, and thus would be good for our people. That's the triple bottom line. We would do LED lighting replacement, so these lights would be much more efficient, would not need to be replaced as often, and would save us energy. And we would do more solar. And that could be a large capital project. We're investigating it now, millions of dollars out of the bond, but it could save us anywhere between $200,000 and $400,000 every year. Yeah. So there's an aspect here that I want the public and the board to understand, that these are proposals we want to go forward because we think it's good business. It's high time we use the bond for what it was written for, what taxpayers voted it for, is to save us operational costs so that we run more efficiently. It's good for our people, it's good for our planet, and it's good for our bottom line. The total savings of the district office and district services listed here are approximately $1.6 million. Pretty good, right? That part feels good. The next part doesn't feel so good. So in the last few meetings, we've talked about this, and we've given some budget and overview of school site spending. You saw from Tom's demographer's report, district enrollment has been declining annually and more steeply at our elementary schools. Decline may accelerate or continue because of local socioeconomic challenges. The cost of living is very difficult here. The cost of a home is very difficult here. We don't have affordable housing here. We have too many single-family homes here. The things that make you rich, coast side, make you poor. It's not sustainable for a school district. The agricultural industry, is it in decline? I don't know, but Bay Flowers is closing. These are statewide trends that we have to deal with. We have used the demographer, we contracted with them, we use bond funds because it's part of our facilities master plan, because I am still committed and I still have a vision and a dream, as I know this board does and I know you do, of rebuilding El Granada and rebuilding Fairlawn View so that they are mold-proof, rust-proof, clean, well-lit places that are great places to learn, that are net zero, and when the lights turn off, we can use a solar storage or use daylighting so that we are okay. But we also know that we are going to have to change our school configuration needs. You know that El Granada has too many classrooms for the number of students it actually serves. And Fairlawn View is the same. And currently, Hatch is the same. We can move students into Hatch. There's vacancy now. Meanwhile, your per student spending, employees' salaries and wages divided by students, varies. At Kings Mountain, and I know many of you here are today from Kings Mountain, you have lower class sizes and you have fewer classrooms. There are 50 students, more or less, with 3 teachers paid by the district, and thus the cost per pupil is higher. I don't think I have a pointer on this thing, do I? Oh, is it? Well, let me go here. This is the graph that talks about the cost per pupil. This is the graph that shows the enrollment. These numbers at the top are the ones with the economies of scale. Of course, they're your bigger schools. You know what they are. They're Half Moon Bay High School, they're Cunha Intermediate School, and they're Hatch Elementary School. They're the most enrolled. And as a result, when you, This weatherman thing is no good for me. Then as a result, you'll see that Half Moon Bay High, Cunha Intermediate, and Hatch are the most economical to run. The ones that are harder to run or more expensive cost per pupil are Pilarcitos, because it's a continuation alternative high school, has lower class size because those students might need more help to stay on track. El Granada is higher because it has a specialized special education program that requires more paraprofessional staff and just more staffing by law, by federal law, by education code. And Kings Mountain because it's small. Again, I'm trying to be empathic, I'm trying to be data-based. If you look at the intermediate schools and the high schools in the current budget and the opportunities we have, per student spending, we just talked about this, but some of our programs are not core and they're not affordable. I'll give you an example. We have some stipends that we currently pay that are just not affordable. They're not contractual, they don't have to be paid. We should have to look at that, but I've told the union members that I want to sit down with them and look at that so that we can decide in the spring how we're going to stop having those stipends. So those are some savings that are not presented tonight. The middle college program serves a very few students, like 7 students, but it costs us $50,000. You'll see it as a cut. There are more cost-effective alternatives. We could cut some programs. If there's low electives at the intermediate and the high school, we should not offer those. We should make sure we expand our enrollments in the other classes so that we can run more efficiently. I told you about software redundancies, and there are other external funding sources. I've been on my hands and knees with partners saying, hey, we're going to make these cuts. We may make these cuts. Can you help us fill the gap? So here are the intermediate and the high school cuts. And these are the ones that sort of bug me at the top most. We've listed there because it was listed in the past by former administration, and I think it was part of the doomsday exercise that if we didn't pass a parcel tax that you would cut one of the assistant principals at the Half Moon Bay High School. I find that really hard personally. Having been a high school assistant principal, knowing as I do what the demands of a high school and college and career readiness are, this is one that kind of is one that I would also probably recommend to the board, don't do this one. The Half Moon Bay High School counselor, similarly, if you got 3 counselors there, all of a sudden your ratio from students to counselor, that's not great for college and career readiness, right? And the Cunha counselor, even though this is on the list, that's another one where I'm kind of like, now we're going to go from 2 counselors at a school with, 800, 900 to 1 counselor. You're not going to get a lot of counseling. That's hard. Cunha Dean, this is actually a teacher, and I've heard that this is a phenomenal professional who has 1 period, and they do special work for students who are really trying to help students with motivation and to help them in their courses. Again, this is hard to deal with. All of these cuts are hard, right? Again, if we could get any outside funders to help us with this, that'd be great. But again, it's my job to provide a list for the board. Campus supervisors reduced. That would be 1 supervisor at the high school and 1 at the middle school. I actually think that this would be doable. Librarian techs reduced 50%. It is a small savings, $60,000. I think that would make that job very difficult, but it is always going to be on a cuts list. You're always going to have librarians, you're always going to have counselors, you're always going to have psychologists. These are standard in the business. That's where we cut because they're not core classroom positions. Summer credit recovery suspended. That's $50,000. That's online credit recovery. We would still have summer school for English language learners and extended school year for our special education students. But this is the online credit recovery. My own experience in my last district is when we no longer could afford summer school, students actually took their classes more seriously, knowing that they couldn't make it up. True story. We had data to prove it. That said, that summer credit recovery program is really great for students who don't make it. There's a cost. Half Moon Bay High School athletics reduced by 50%. I'm meeting with members of the boosters this Friday. We would hope that the boosters could help us with filling the gap on this. They do raise a phenomenal amount of money, and the community is very good to them. And we have phenomenal athletics programs, but I don't want to see John Nazar's face right now. Is he here? Yeah. So sorry. Cunha after-school sports eliminated. To be truthful, Cabrillo Unified enjoys wonderful programs, but many school districts have eliminated after-school sports at the middle school long ago. In my old district, this was taken care of by the foundation, and I would hope that we could get into a partnership with the city, with recreation, with our other after-school partners to potentially fill the gap on that. But when you think about the fact that we have 8 volleyball programs in the fall at Cunha, that's one of those cuts that's a nice to have, but not a need to have. It's not required. Middle college program, I talked to you about that. It's basically 7 students, 50 grand. I'm not even sure we collect the ADA on them. It might be more than that. It might be 70, it might be $120,000 lost to the district for those 7 students. That program, we've already signaled in the June, I think, that we would not continue it. It's sad for me because I used to be an early college high school principal. Community liaisons and attendance clerks, reduced 50% or their jobs combined. It's $100,000. It's 2.25 FTE. Truth be told, we are shown in the Edd data that we have classified staff higher numbers than the average bear in California. Nonetheless, the community liaisons, when this originally came on the list, I couldn't bear that only it was on the list. I would rather combine the jobs, and I have sought out Stig Lynn and CSEA to say, is it possible, could we work on negotiating, combining these jobs so that we could keep people employed and have them have benefits, because when they go below half time, they lose their benefits. And then tighter staffing. I have recommended and suggested and want us to look into a 6-period day at Cunha. You currently have a 7-period day. A 6-period day could be more efficient. We could save money, we could staff more effectively, we could staff and enroll more, and we'd have less teacher cost. We did this in my last district. In one school, they had a 7-period day, the other middle schools had a 6-period day. We were able to drop and gain $200,000. Also, if we did tighter staffing, and again, John Nazar, I apologize to you, Half Moon Bay High School, we talked the other day about if there's electives that are not enrolled at high numbers, we may have to cut them. And if we could do 5 classes, we might save $100,000. Everybody's going to have to give here. Current budget elementary schools, again, you heard from Tom Williams earlier. Your per student spending, because you have enrollment and because you have declining enrollment, if you keep the same number of teachers, it costs more money to run. And so our per student spending, employee salaries and wages divided by the number of students, is notably higher at Kings Mountain, as I have demonstrated, as we've shown. And that's because they have lower class sizes. They have a K1 class, a 2-3 class, and a 4-5 class. They have fewer students than with 3 teachers, they should have 75 students. If you're going to go by our class size ratio, they have 50 odd. It costs more. It's data. It's not personal. For the people here who go to Kings Mountain, I totally understand it's personal. And I'm sorry for that. But I need to give the data. We need to present the data. El Granada, of course, that costs more because of a specialized mandated program that we talked about, but Hatch and Fairlawn View are less. That the highest student-to-teacher ratio at Hatch results in an economy of scale, but remember, there are some mixed benefits, more cost-effective alternatives. We could look at potential funding sources for some cuts. I've included their 5th grade band. 5th grade band is not a priority. It happens after school. It's done on an ad hoc basis. We could save some money. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. I love band. I play music. My son plays music, but it's something we have to look at. So we have to make decisions to balance the needs of the district as a whole so we can maintain local control. So the cuts from savings in the elementary schools actually are below $1 million. We went from 1.6 at district and district services to 1.2 at the intermediate and high, and now we go to the elementary schools. You've already heard that the one at the bottom, I want to recommend the board no longer consider. I will go from the bottom. Consolidation of Granada Elementary and Fairlawn View Elementary. To do this, we would have to place portables on a campus. To do it by 2020 would be like, I want to say an act of God. It would be very difficult to accomplish. We'd have to get Division of State Architect to say that we could put 15 to 20 portables on that tiny little postage stamp of a field at El Granada, or on that grassy slope in the back of Fairlawn View. It would be extremely hard to do by 2020. And beyond that, I think with the parcel tax passing and knowing the community, even the 3 months that I've been here the way I do, I think this would be very difficult for the coast side to accept, understand, or be able to tolerate. And I say that also because I drive through that traffic from Fairlawn View to El Granada every morning. There are serious concerns to me about safety, about the ability to do it, about the construction, and just in general, if you had that many number of kids on those campuses in their current state, I think it's too hard. And then we're going to modernize them? I think it's hard. But I'll go back to the top. Hatch assistant principal. This kind of kills me. I know the person. It was on a list before I came to the district. But it's something we have to consider as a potential cut. A science specialist contribution at $16,000 from the district, and bless them, the Cabrillo Education Foundation, as I understand it, pays the other portion. But it is a specialist. It is not required. We could do without it, or we could beg upon a funder maybe to fill the gap. Kindergarten enrichment, extra staffing. I was meeting at Fairlawn View with their staff the other day, and although we're keeping these arrangements in place this year, and we will have kindergarten enrichment, next year all bets are off. There must be another way we could do it, or we won't do it. It's 60 grand. Or someone will pay for it to be done. Fifth grade band music, I just spoke about that. It's the $30,000 cut, and it's an employee currently at the middle school, I believe, who goes from school to school once or twice a week, and it's done on an ad hoc basis. It's not enrolled. It's after school, as I understand it. Community liaisons and attendance clerks, it's the same rationales I gave before. We may be staffed a little high. They're nice to have. The community liaisons is particularly important to me because I think we do need, with 52% of our population being Latino and many English language learners and many Hispanohablante, Spanish-speaking families in the coast side, I think that's an important place. But we will be looking at either cutting those positions 50%, cutting attendance clerks 50%, or combining it so we have bilingual community liaisons and attendance clerks. Tighter staffing, the community is going to have to understand that combo classes will exist. If you do not have enough numbers to fill a class, you must accept a combo class. Because if you don't, then what am I going to do? Not pay our teachers and our classified staff? Because all money's green, it's all one bucket. We're either going off the ledge, becoming insolvent, taking millions of dollars of loans, having to pay interest for decades, losing board local control, or we're keeping arrangements as they were. The community has got to understand we're going to have some combo classes. And nobody should please think that we could afford anything else. I think it's ironic that Kings Mountain, of course, loves their combo classes and has a K1 class, a 2-3 class, and a 4-5 class. I think they love it. I think it's important to say. Many private schools, they love it. They pay good money for it. So combo classes, as hard as it is on students, maybe, I don't know. A lot of people say it's great. As hard as it is on teachers, that I believe. That I believe. But in my old district, it was the same thing. When you have small schools, get ready, you're going to have combo classes. It's going to be a thing. Finally, closure of Kings Mountain Elementary School, the thing that many people here are probably here for tonight. Raise your hand if you're here for that item. Okay. So This has been something that before I took the job, before I interviewed for the job, there was somebody that my wife works at Stanford, and she has a friend who used to live in the Coast Side and was part of the mothers group here, and then they moved to Palo Alto, and she told my wife, okay, just get ready for this whole Kings Mountain thing. It's a beautiful school, it's a beautiful location, but it's always going to be on the list. It's been on the list, it was on the list when I came. It's something that has to be recommended because of its size. But again, you'll see that the savings are $162,000, which I hear someone say is nothing. I remember us talking up at the school. Grandma, you sent your child there and you want to send your grandchildren there, and I'm not going to communicate. Three-generation King Mountain right there. So, those are the cuts. Now, the summary of the big picture themes considered in the budget cut process, we've described this as a funnel. We talked about themes. We get to the November conversation. The board will have some questions. We will talk. The community will talk. The cuts must be significant. They have to be between 1.75 and 2.5 million with the parcel tax. If it's 1.75 million, we're qualified as a budget. If it's 2.5 million, we are positive. But our county friends are here. I'm sorry, my glaucoma always impacts me a little bit. There you go. Our county friends are here, and they will tell you that they will like us to do 2.5 to get to a positive certification, but they're going to continue being our friends ongoing. And I can tell you the reason for this, and I've told the board members this too, and I tell everybody I meet, this isn't over until it's over. And I will tell you it's never over. As long as you have declining enrollment, as long as the state doesn't fund us adequately, we will be in a budget cycle, certainly through 2025, because pension reform costs are still going to cost the district. The employees level off. There's hope. There may be more state funding in January. Maybe Governor Newsom will give us more. There's hope. There's hope. There are going to be dueling tax initiatives in November, hopefully, to bring ostensibly what might be $15 billion to public education. Enough to get us to the national average. There's hope. There's hope, Heidi. But for us to remain solvent, to maintain local control, to avoid takeover by the San Mateo County Office of Education, we have to cut between 1.75 and 2.5 million minimum, and I would hope that this board would go for the 2.5, considering we worked hard to provide 3.8. Contractual and legal obligations mean that available cuts cannot be made now to class sizes. A majority of cuts to be recommended by staff in months ahead will still protect basic classroom services. Your classroom teachers, for the most part, particularly in the elementary grades, as long as the enrollment doesn't decline, you will keep those number of teachers. Budget cuts will be recommended to address overstaffing, the nice to have, the need to have, inefficiencies, redundancies, program staff that are not considered to be core requirements. But we must acknowledge again that the cuts will impact staff as this requires layoffs. In a school district, 80% of expenses are in staffing, wages, and benefits, and budget cuts of this magnitude will mean jobs. We will lay people off. We already have at the district office. We anticipate providing additional information in subsequent meetings 2 weeks from now and then in December, but we also know some of the recommendations for budget cuts may not be approved, and we will bring more. There will be more. And finally, this is a new bullet for me. I want to do this, and I started off again. We want to reassure families and staff that ongoing work will be done to restore cuts and to reevaluate those cuts if and when the district receives new information regarding state or federal budget increases going forward. If we get the opportunity to get more money, and we can count on it, we will plan for the worst and we will hope for the best. So it's not over till it's over. We will continue to try to restore cuts as we can, when we can reevaluate them and figure out which ones are the closest to our core function. That said, there was an appendix. The appendix was the org charts. I had promised my many colleagues, including the board and my union colleagues, that we would have org charts. I'm not going to go over them, but the public and the board have org charts for every school and for the district office. And I thank you And remind me, we have to come back and approve the letter of engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. So we have our stack. We're ready to go. I'll call by name, and again, we'll have 3 minutes, and then we will, okay. And so 3 minutes per person, and after that, we will open up to discussion and questions from the board. And then we will go to the approval of the FICMAT contract. Okay, so I'll call first up Nicole Smith.
Hi, so I am Nicole Smithson. I am a parent of a Kings Mountain first grader and also the Kings Mountain Associated Parents Secretary. And here I have packets that I am going to pass to Rosie for each of you to take and review. But I'm going to start by reading you a letter that we have drafted on behalf of parents and staff at Kings Mountain, and we have roughly 70 people that have signed this letter for the school board and superintendent and other officials. So we, the undersigned, would like to convey to you how important Kings Mountain Elementary School, or KMES, is to our lives. For some of us, it was an active and deliberate choice to send our children to KMES. For others, it is our local neighborhood school, and for others, it is our livelihood. However, we all have one thing in common. We are all passionate about how this school is changing and shaping the lives of our children for the better. Kings Mountain Elementary School offers an environment unlike any other school in Cabrillo Unified School District. It has multi-age classrooms by design, not by default. These multi-age classrooms are part of its strength. They help our students develop strong social, emotional, and verbal skills and self-esteem, as well as building a caring, child-centered, and project-based learning environment. They encourage our children to grow in many ways by developing friendships across multiple grade levels and leading to a harmonious school community and improved student attitudes towards school and schoolwork. The smaller environment provided by KMES with its 3 classrooms has been an asset to so many of us, and it inherently leads to a quieter and calmer environment, which has been fundamental to the success of many of our children. The children all know each and every other child and adult at the school, and every adult knows the uniqueness of each of our students. For those of us who have sought out KMES specifically, this small environment has been crucial to the success of our children. For many, it has also been the difference between staying in the public school system, which we value and are passionate about, and sending our children to private schools. In addition to these wonderful attributes, KMES also has a strong focus on social and emotional learning, which is integrated into its entire teaching day. It provides students with necessary support and lifelong skills and supports their extraordinary academic learning experience. This focus on social emotional learning has benefited so many of our students, many of whom have struggled in previous environments. For those of us lucky enough to call KMES our neighborhood school, it is an essential part of our community, without which our nearest CUSD school is over a 20-minute drive away. Many of us ourselves attended this wonderful school, and we all value it for its amazing environment it offers our children, and we wouldn't have it any other way. The already rural and remote community of Kings Mountain will not be the same without this unique and delightful school. Without it and its friendships forming blend of mountain kids and coastside kids, our shared sense of community with the coast will be weakened. We cannot emphasize strongly enough how much Kings Mountain Elementary means to all of us and all of our children. The school is an asset to CUSD and the coastside, and its value is much greater than numbers on a page. We wish to encourage you to look at all of the factors and wonders of a school, not just the numbers, especially when deciding the fate of our school and the fate of our children. The choice to keep Kings Mountain Elementary School open is the right decision. Having the smaller alternative learning environment KMES provides for students and families who need it for success is crucial to helping all children thrive within CUSD. Sincerely, the parents and staff at Kings Mountain Elementary School. So this giant packet has all of the electronic signatures, and then everybody else gets a copy of a list with all of those people. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Okay, next I'll call up Ted Thayer.
Good evening. My name is Ted Thayer, and I understand you have some very difficult choices to make. I don't envy you at all. But I just wanted to give you my perspective on closing Kings Mountain Elementary School. I went to Kings Mountain Elementary School a long time ago, as you probably can tell. My daughter also recently attended Kings Mountain Elementary School, so I have two generations. Deb's got me beat, but maybe someday. Yeah, my daughter went to Kings Mountain Elementary School because we moved back. We had been gone for a long time. We came back, and one of the things we really looked forward to was to send her to that school. She had struggled at her other school, and now with the help of attending Kings Mountain Elementary School, she's now at Cunha, 7th grader, doing great, been on the honor roll every year. And so I can speak to, from personal experience, both from myself many years ago and from my daughter, that there is a lot of value in the small class sizes. I understand, as Superintendent was saying, that there are small class sizes and therefore the cost per student is high, but the benefit far exceeds the cost. And the other thing I'd like to mention is that, and to touch further on what was said in the letter, is that it's really not just about academics. Going to that school and the community support for that school installs kids with this sense of volunteerism and community activism, and they see it in their, and not just the parents of the kids that attend the school, but the whole community is behind the school. And I think that really helps the kids to become better citizens and better human beings. And I wanted to touch on something else, which is that I'm confident that there are other students that have, other than my daughter, who have greatly benefited from going to Kings Mountain Elementary. In the presentation, it said 2/3 of the current student body of 50-some-odd kids come from the coast. And as you heard from reading that letter, there are a lot of people who specifically send their kids to that school. It's not just the locals up there who benefit. I think that's something to remember, is that the whole coast side has the opportunity to benefit from this school. And just in closing, I just want to sum up just to remind you, as was recently said, that the value of Kings Mountain Elementary School goes far beyond the dollars that you see on the budget. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Ted. Next up, Marty Phelps. And I'll tell you the next name. I'll tell you the next name so you can get ready. Ben Rosner, queue up, please.
Distinguished board, Dr. Fettridge, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here on behalf of Kings Mountain School, its ties to Kings Mountain community, and the greater Half Moon Bay Coastside community. My name is Marty Phelps. In addition to being a proud father of 2 wonderful Cabrillo Unified School District alumni, I have served on several boards here on the coast, including the Half Moon Bay High School Parent Advisory Council, where I served as treasurer for 6 years, president of the Half Moon Bay Interscholastic Surf Club, founder and former head coach of the Half Moon Bay High School surf team, as well as treasurer for 13 years and current president of the Kings Mountain Art Fair. As stated in the CUSD mission statement, right up there, education is a partnership between student, family, school, and community. That statement echoes the sentiment of what life is like here in our coastal community, right? This sounds very much like our Surf Club's mission statement, a shared positive experience. For me, my family, Kings Mountain, and the greater coastside community, this is what we are all about. Not just numbers. That's why we live here. All right, everybody? Yeah. Sophia, as you stated in your campaign for CUSD president, support for every child, every day, by strengthening community alignment and partnerships to overcome challenges such as budget, numbers, cost of living, and teacher shortages. We know that. It was once stated by a past CUSD board president, Our schools should be and always be the focal point and anchor to our community. We can't close schools. With that being said, it's obvious that all of us involved in our schools, our community, our children, we all share that viewpoint, especially you guys. I mean, look at the time you guys spend, the love and devotion you're putting towards our schools. I can assure you without a doubt, if you choose to close a local neighborhood school in hopes to save a few bucks, you will be cutting right into the core fabric of what makes our community so great. Honestly, I am appalled and shocked that the possible closing of Kings Mountain School would even be on the potential cut list. Sorry. With over $3.5 million of other possible ways to trim your budget, I would hope you can find a way to see past the $162,000 savings of closing Kings Mountain Elementary School. Not to repeat what has or will be stated several times this evening, if you close Kings Mountain School, you might save $162,000, but all of us, we will lose. We will lose our only small cherished alternative school on the coast. We will lose our school that has at times been amongst the highest rated in San Mateo County, as well as the state of California. We will lose a 3-time distinguished award-winning school. We will most likely lose a majority of students and their tax revenue as they go off to private schools or petition into Woodside Elementary. Not to mention the powerful voting strength of Kings Mountain, which historically has unanimously supported the CUSD parcel tax and bond measures. I believe in this election we were over 82%. Half Moon Bay restaurants, local economy will lose a lot of revenue from Kings Mountain families dining on the coast while they wait to pick their kids up from play practice, football games, and other school and sporting events. So much of the Kings Mountain families choose to do business with local coastside businesses primarily because of their involvement with their children in the schools. That goes for accountants, restaurants, insurance, investment brokers, computer and IT management, contractors, photographers, etc. When our daughter got married, well, both of our daughters got married over the last few years, we used all coastside vendors. We will lose the most successful per-student fundraising avenues where Kings Mountain Art Fair and the Cookie Bake bring in over $1,500 per student in just one weekend. That's incredible. But most of all, my biggest fear is the loss of our sense of community. Again, right up there. For all of my 33 years of living on Kings Mountain, I've loved every minute of it, and especially being part of the Half Moon Bay community. So much of these feelings come from our schools, our local schools, our neighborhood schools, and how well our school fits with CUSD and its mission. Please, you guys, honor our community, your mission, and do not close our neighborhood school. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marty. Ben Rosner.
Good evening, board members, leaders. Every child, every day. Every child, every day. In Kings Mountain Elementary School, in offering a district alternative to families whose children thrive in that environment, helps CUSD live up to the motto of every child, every day by offering educational options for every child, every day. For whatever reasons, people throughout the district send their children to Kings Mountain Elementary School. Children have thrived there since 1952. The decision that is before you is not merely one on a ledger. If you take away the very place where these children thrive, socially, emotionally, and academically, your decision at this one moment in time will have indelible ripple effects throughout these children's lives. That is a mighty responsibility. I'm going to wrap up my comments by telling you a story. Since starting kindergarten at Kings Mountain Elementary School, this year, Ariel, my daughter, who's 5, has gone in reading from 0 to SIXTY. And she has gone in math from 0 to 2 times 30. But way more than that, she has taken to spontaneous acts of joy. Spontaneous acts of joy. Just to put a face to spontaneous acts of joy, I will just let you pass this around. I do want to collect it from Holly at the end, please. Ariel, I ask her, why are you skipping down the driveway for no reason? Because, Dad, she says to me, I never knew my school could be so good. Ariel, I ask her, why are you breaking out in a grin when there is nothing going on? Dad, I'm thinking about school. Now, I want to ask you, leadership, when is the last time you broke out into a spontaneous act of joy? It takes something pretty incredible to cause that. Now, we thought we had gone to a pretty good preschool, and perhaps we did, but nothing that caused spontaneous acts of joy. So there's a lot we can learn from our kids on how to celebrate life. Do not let the light go out. And for those in the room who believe in CUSD's motto and the role that every one of our schools in CUSD can play in living and breathing that motto together, I invite everybody to repeat with me one more time the motto. Every child, every day. Thank you.
All right, next up, Linda Hennessy Roth, and I promise I'd cue you up with the next one, Holly Winnan, after that. So Linda, please.
Hi, I'm a Kings Mountain resident and a mother of 3 children who are now adults, who had the wonderful benefits of going to Kings Mountain School. They're all, as I said, adults, professionals, 2 in medical and veterinary science, and 1 who is part of the Cabrillo district community. He is a teacher, a coach, and the athletic director at Half Moon Bay High, and he works tirelessly. And I'm very proud of him. He could not be here tonight because he's working, but he asked me to express his endorsement for KMES. I want to focus just for a moment on how we support children's well-being in our primary schools. I'm trained as a scientist and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work here on the coast and over the hill. And I just want to point out the obvious that schools, wherever they are, can be protective predictors of well-being for our children. By providing safety, positive social relationships, positive school connectedness, they help children to grow, thrive, and learn. As board members, you have really challenging, very challenging choices to make. We do know that KMAS provides a unique education, a unique environment, and one that fosters well-being with a proven record. So thank you for listening.
Holly Winnan, please, and next up is Tim Naylor.
Come on, Patrick. This is my son, Patrick. He was a product of Kings Mountain School. I have 4 children. I've been the Kings Mountain School president, Ed Fund president for 10 years when they were there. I served on the high school, at that time called PAC, for about 10 years. I'm currently a substitute teacher in the district, so I visit all the schools, have quite a feeling for most of them. And I guess I'd just like to say that, you know, dollars and cents wise, you know, you can do that graph and it looks like Kings Mountain's really expensive. But I think you have to look at what else you're gaining from Kings Mountain. And people have mentioned the special environment, and it truly is when you're up there. The feel, the support that you get at that school compared to when I'm at a different school substituting, it's so vastly different. And a lot has to do with the size. When the kids were going through school and they go down to Cunha, I had multiple teachers down there say, you know, we can always tell those kids from Kings Mountain School. And I'd say, well, why? They go, well, because they're all more self-confident. They're all better neighbors to the rest of the kids. They're always more helpful to the other kids. So there's something that's happening on the mountain in that school that's fostering that kind of caring. I mean, I go to all the classes in all the different schools and it says be nice and, you know, be respectful, be thoughtful. But for some reason at Kings Mountain, hi there, how are you? For some reason at Kings Mountain, it just actually seems to become ingrained in the kids. And I don't know what the magic recipe is. It seems to be working. I was asked to read this, so I will. I'd like to thank the Kings Mountain community for rallying the neighborhood, talking with friends and neighbors, and going to meetings to learn about the measure, ask questions, and then take action in voting. Some people know we are passionate about education and love to support our local school. We know extra funding is necessary, and we vote to show our support. So I'm especially proud that of the 12 precincts within the CUSD boundaries that have at least 100 voters, the one that demonstrated, as we have for many years, our overwhelming support in providing supplemental funding for CUSD. The Kings Mountain precinct had the highest percentage of yes votes, 82.2%. While we are proud to have helped push previous measures with narrow margins of victory beyond the passing threshold, we are even happier this time around to be among a broader group of district support. So again, I think Marty touched on it and some of the other folks. You guys, all of Cabrillo gains a lot of support from Kings Mountain beyond just the size of the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Holly. Tim, and then up next will be Alma Fletcher.
Hi, thank you. And thanks to the board and all the staff for everything they do and just the difficulty of this decision. Understand nothing is straightforward. There's a lot of great values being expressed about this school and this community, and I think it transcends into the greater district. And part of what makes Kings Mountain special to us is being part of this district and the overall integration that it allows. And so while we are, for those of us who live on the mountain, I moved up to the mountain 4 years ago to live next to my in-laws where my wife grew up. And we moved there from Los Gatos, where we owned a home, and we made the choice to move back to Kings Mountain to assist with being part of my in-laws' life as they got older. My mother-in-law's Parkinson's. And one of the key considerations was that Kings Mountain Elementary School and the overall district that this offered was a good alternative. We were leaving Los Gatos right at the time when our oldest child was entering kindergarten. So it was a difficult decision. And we now have 3 children, 9, 7, and 3, and fully intend for them to be part of this community. And that's why we ask that you really do reflect on the value, that the overall sense of value that this school brings both to the local Kings Mountain community, and it allows for, like, our family, multi-generational living, and that we can have integrated we can assist with my in-laws, we can be there, we can be present, and my in-laws can also be present in the lives of our children. If we don't have this, my wife and I both are lawyers, we work full-time. My wife went to Kings Mountain. It's a fantastic educational platform for her to prosper, and we would hate to have that removed, because it would really create challenges both in terms of where just our life logistics simply, and how we could meet the balance that all parents struggle with in today's day and age. So again, really hope that you'll look at the overall sense of the value or lack of value that we see in closing the school, because for one, hey there, buddy. Just, I would say, the real dollar material, when we talk about the per student cost, I feel like that piece, it's a little bit misleading, and especially knowing what just a few students can do on that small basis when you're just doing it on a percentage basis. So I would ask, like, in the totality of the circumstances, that you consider the overall value to the COSIDE community and to our individual Kings Mountain community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alma Fletcher, and then followed by Elizabeth Weiss.
Alma Fletcher, retired Half Moon Bay High School English and Business teacher. First, I'd like to thank you, Sophia, and your board for all you do for our district. As a former school district teacher, I know how many hours you spend at this unpaid job. And Freya, it's so good to see you here, still serving the district. Freya worked with us to pass the first successful parcel tax Measure E in 2010 after it had gone down to defeat so many times.
And you helped us out.
Thank you, thank you. And Lizette, thanks for giving back to the school district that reared you.
You were my teacher. You were one of my teachers when I was in school.
We're very proud of you. I'm the mother of two adult children, two adults, okay, who attended Kings Mountain School, kindergarten through 5th grade. When they started school, there were no maps on the wall, no library, and no playground equipment. We collected Betty Crocker coupons to acquire a badminton net and rackets. All this in spite of the fact that the district received necessary small school funding from the state, but we had nothing except 3 very dedicated teachers and a building. But the can-do spirit of school parents persevered. They created a great library, music, science, art, and foreign language programs using community volunteers and money earned at the annual Kings Mountain Art Fair and fundraising dinners. The community continues to support the school because it has been the hub of Kings Mountain for as long as I've lived there, 57 years. Our water district, now the California Water Service, was born in meetings at the school. The Skyline 4-H Club held monthly meetings there until it disbanded. And the monthly Kings Mountain Improvement Association meetings were held at the school, as well as smaller community groups. So, in return, Kings Mountain residents support the district voting for bonds and parcel tax measures. We consistently turn out the vote for these needed measures, and were instrumental in getting Measure B passed in 2014. Our residents spending many hours to get the job done. I am imploring you to save Kings Mountain School. Its ADA monies and the support at the ballot box. If you close our distinguished school, the students will go to Woodside Elementary because our parents, for the most part, work over the hill, and Woodside Elementary is losing enrollment and would welcome the ADA. Once our kids make friends there, they will want to stay with these friends, and our great junior high and high school will lose the ADA. Please don't let this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alma Elizabeth Weiss, and next is Heather and Patrick Winnen. Sorry, I can't read. Oh, okay, so we'll scratch that. Okay, so Elizabeth Weiss right now, and then next up will be Brianna LaFontaine.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Weiss. I'm the legal guardian of my precious granddaughter, and that's the reason I'm here. I want to ask, how many of you have actually experienced the sort of magical community that Kings Mountain is? Okay. I'm new to this. I didn't know. She had 3 solid years at Granada, an excellent school. I see the creativity, the dedication of teachers, and I watched my child go further and further down. I watched her come home hating school, telling me that she was stupid. And I don't fault the school, I just accept it was a wrong match. We were looking at private schools. Now for me, as someone who's 60, I can promise you my retirement is getting further and further into the future by taking on a grandchild. To try to figure out how to budget for private school is not something that's high on my list. Juliet, soccer mom, said, why don't you check out Kings Mountain? And so we went up to see what it was like, and the attunement and the preciousness. It was like walking into another world. Kings Mountain is so far superior to the private schools that I can't afford. And I want you to know that. And I want to give you a few little stories so you can know what it feels like. So we're up there, and my child is sitting here telling her other friends, hey, school's out tomorrow. And her peers are saying, we're so sad. And I'm like, that's different. We go, and she didn't want to leave when we go up for the talent show. She's happy there. We go up, we enroll her in school, she's scared, whole big new thing, big new school. Next thing you know, I'm busy and being invited to a professional place to cook, and I'm making cookies, and I'm talking to all these fabulous people and learning about the dedication and the commitment. The very next weekend, she's out there selling cookies, big fat cookies. You don't need to try to sell these cookies. There's 60 years of selling these cookies, or however many. And she, my shy, not socially adept child, is feeling loved and nurtured and seeing friends all over. Here's a child who now greets me with, Grandma, did you vote? Don't forget to vote. I had to give her proof. So she knew I voted. Here's a child who's coming home excited about homework. Instead of giving me the standard answer, what's your favorite class, recess, she loves writing. We're not there on math, but she loves writing. And I want you to know what it feels like to have a child transformed. We go and see friends or family, they're like, what happened to that kid? That is not the same kid. She is laughing. She is happy. She is talking to strangers. This school is a treasure beyond what we knew, what we imagined. In our life, it's a powerful, life-transforming gift. We lost Grandpa a year ago. We're not exactly on the super high, happy phase of life right now, and this school is bringing such a gift. You don't get that. You don't create that casually or in a year or 10 years. The depth of community is not something that can be replaced if this is taken away. This is not something that can ever be rebuilt. It's precious. I see your creativity. I see how committed you are in finding outstanding ways to keep our school district as best it can. I beg you, please, bring that creativity to find a way to keep this magical school alive.
Thank you. Okay, Brianna LaFontaine, and then up next is Christy Walker.
Hi, I'm Brianna LaFontaine. I'm a parent to a TK and first grader at Granada Elementary School. I am the PTO president there. I am a co-founder of Co-Signers for Better Education Funding, and I was on the leadership team to pass Measure I. I feel slightly out of place right now in between all these Kings Mountain families, and I love them. They were definitely instrumental in helping get Measure I word out and supporting it. And when I went up to Kings Mountain, it was an amazing community to speak to and talk with. I'm not exactly sure how this works since Sean isn't suggesting that the consolidation of El Granada and Fairlawn, but this was to both consolidation and closing, so I'm going to keep going. These are my opinions. I was also on the financial advisory committee put on by the district, so I've been discussing possible cuts this whole year. Seeing the potential cut list posted on the agenda was not shocking to me, but the amounts were, as that was not given to our committee when discussing the cuts. We were not given the cost of anything, but still participated in an activity where we had to rank the list of cuts. And at the bottom of the list, this was a group of about 15 plus community members. I legitimately thought closing a school was like $1 million in savings a year. Without knowing the savings, the school closing was the bottom of our list. We have 4 incredible elementary schools. They all have their highlights, their personality, and most families can find their fit within one of these schools. As I said, I have a child in TK. On the first day of school at recess, my TK daughter was incredibly nervous but found her brother. He showed her the ropes and held her hand as they walked around the playground. I was not at school. I did not see this. I know this because multiple teachers told me what they saw. Multiple parents told me what their children told them. Lucas helped his little sister today. When I think about the consolidation and closing of schools, and our school doubling in size, I think about that first day of school. Teachers know who my children are because of the small school community we have. My daughter was able to find her brother because there's room on the playground to see all of the kids. Other children who know their friend's little sister is because most kids recognize each other at school. When our principal walks around campus, you get the feeling she knows every child. I can't imagine that would be the same with 700 to 800 students. Our children feel safe at school. The staff knows them, the parents know them, and the students know each other. Double the size, and that sense of security diminishes greatly. El Granada is also the SPED school. I can't imagine doubling the size of our school would make the students in that program feel comfortable and safe. Again, our students know each other. No matter what class you come from, the students are saying hi to each other and know where each other should be. Double the size, and I believe kids that age will feel lost. I have parents coming up to me to apologize for not volunteering for something or asking what the next event needs or just letting me know something they saw with my kids because they were helping out at school. We feel connected. We feel responsible to each other. We take care in each other's lives. Double the size and our community feeling will disappear. I spent quite some time researching small versus large schools. This is not a highly researched topic where you could get results that I would have wanted, like Sophia would want. But in general, a small elementary school is less than 400 students. Every report I found stated large schools make financial sense, but not one report said that educationally or emotionally, larger schools were better for our students. These are our kids. Closing Kings Mountain and consolidating Fairlawn View and El Granada is not worth the loss of our environment our children deserve. Former Education Secretary Richard Riley said the nation needs to create small, supportive learning environments that give students a sense of connection. Size matters. I don't envy what you are deciding on. I've been through corporate layoffs. My family has dealt with 3 company closures. Eliminating or downsizing job hurts people in our community and their families. I do believe, though, that since cuts are going to happen, that our children should be the most removed from it. And the environment they have now, The learning environment they are used to, the social environment most helpful for young children, which they currently have, should stay the same. I urge you to remove elementary school closures and consolidations from the potential cut lists. Thank you.
Thanks, Brianna. Christy Walker, and then last but not least, Amber Surya.
Hi, I'm Christy Walker, and you've seen me up here before. I have a daughter who's a second grader at Kings Mountain. I am the site council president at Kings Mountain. I am on the KMAP board as the liaison, and I have lived in the coastside community for almost 20 years. I'm also an educator and work at Palo Alto Junior Museum and Zoo as an educator and teach in science at a number of schools in Palo Alto and East Palo Alto. And I'm here today to ask you to please consider that our community, Coastside Mountain, our school district, is much better served by having 4 elementary schools than by having 3 or 2 elementary schools. And we are very different than a large urban area like Oakland, or even a small city like Redwood City, or other places where they are closing schools. The geographics of our area, which was not part of the demographic study, I think is a really important factor and something I'd like you to look at before you make any cuts and closures or consolidations of schools. The impacts are much greater given the geography of the coast and the mountain, and just makes things that are already very difficult, which have been mentioned, such as traffic and logistics, that much more difficult, especially in this day and age where many parents, households have both or single parents working. The logistics involved of it's already challenging, and making it more challenging doesn't help families. The schools that we have now, the elementary schools in particular, they all have their own character, their own special community, and I'd like to echo many of the things that Brianna said were on my list to say to you today, as far as we have data that shows that smaller schools are much better for kids. Not necessarily only small schools with 50 kids, which of course is what's working for my family at the moment, but also smaller schools where we don't have 700 students in the school. The community feel that we have on all of the schools, I visited them when I was looking for a place for my daughter, and given her particular needs, we decided not to go to our neighborhood school, which is a fine school, but was too big. My daughter went to a small in-home preschool, and there were 12 children there on the busiest days, and she got overwhelmed by that. And so for her, even going to one of our smaller elementary schools along the coast seemed like a much too big of a place for her to feel comfortable. And Kings Mountain has been absolutely a wonderful fit for her. But I'm not speaking just as a Kings Mountain parent. I am mostly speaking as a community member who is concerned that we will lose the sense of the coast if we end up, in long term or short term, end up going from 4 schools down to 2 or 3. And I think that there is a lot that would be lost in that, and I really urge you, as I know you will, to think about that and be creative in ways of maintaining all 4 of our elementary schools. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Christy. Amber Surya, and then we did have a last minute request, and I'm sorry, it's hard to read the name, Ms. or Mr. Murphy. In the top, the agenda item was listed as teachers, but I think because this came in after the public comment section of our agenda, rather than revise the agenda and go through that whole process, because I'm sure that would just add time, I'm fine just adding that to this topic after Amber, if that person is still here and would like to speak. So I guess it's a first good question, Ms. or Mr. Murphy, prepare yourselves, because I'll ask you to confirm that after Amber speaks. Go ahead, Amber.
I just have a request for clarification on a data point.
And actually this was touched on at the last board meeting, but on the slide included in the financial packet in the current budget overview of school site spending, at the bottom it indicates that spending estimates are based on a review of total employee salary wages specific to site, including externally funded jobs employed by CUSD. So my question is, if those externally funded jobs are being funded via PTO dollars or foundation dollars, that information should be removed if this is meant to be a reflection of the actual cost to CUSD, because although those dollars run through the system at the district, they do not actually cost the district. So my request would be maybe that we think about revising this slide, if possible, to adjust it to reflect really the actual cost to CUSD, or somehow reflect how those external dollars might be impacting the percentages. Thank you.
Mr. or Ms. Murphy, are you still here? They decided to leave early. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Zira. There you are. Okay. Are you okay just speaking now?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's kind of a little sort of off topic, but related to teachers, which we pay with our budget.
Yeah.
So.
My friend Lauren wasn't able to come, so she asked me and my friends if any of us would be able to speak today. And my name is Even. I'm a junior at Half Moon Bay High School, and I moved here last year from Kansas. And as you can imagine, it was very different and scary. And I was incredibly nervous, but my teachers made my transition really smooth and really enjoyable. And my teachers have taught me to enjoy school, make the most of it, and give it your all. Some of my teachers sparked my interest in what happens to be film and broadcasting. And my teachers have helped me really move along. I went from eating lunch alone in the bathroom to running around at lunch, going to different clubs. I went from spending my Friday nights watching Great British Bake Off with my parents to never missing a football game with my best friends. And I think that everyone in this room can think of teachers that have really influenced them in a positive way. And our teachers are really influential and valuable, and they deserve to stay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody who had the courage to come up and speak, and some of you are more comfortable with it than others, I know, but all of it is definitely very much greatly appreciated as this community engagement. I would hope that we can continue to see at least half this number of people in the room at every board meeting the next several years, for good reasons, not crisis reasons. But with that, we're done with the comments, so we will open up to the board for comments and questions for Dr. McFetrich. Who wants to start?
There is, of course, a lot to digest in terms of all of the different cuts and prioritizing them, and luckily we don't have to make an actual decision tonight. I just want to thank you and your staff for thoroughly going through and for suggesting quite a few things that were efficiencies for cuts, so that we're doing, at the same time as making everything work better, we're also saving money, and I really, really appreciate those. I appreciate your pursuit of the solar and the energy efficiencies and other things, which was one of our intentions in passing Measure S, our bond, so that's also really wonderful to see. I hate making cuts. I do not want to be here. I had my own whiplash moment. I had that spontaneous act of joy on Tuesday night at 8:05 when we got our 74% for Measure I, and then the next day everyone was like, aren't you feeling great, aren't you feeling great? I'm like, I don't know, I'm about to read this board packet, and it's not looking good. So I've had that whiplash moment, and I wish we didn't have to cut. So I guess I'd just like to begin by talking about my priorities for cutting. I would like to keep it away from students as much as possible, as far as we can from their actual daily lives. And in that, I appreciate Sean's taking out the consolidation of Fairlawn Elementary And I would personally like to propose that we take out the closing of Kings Mountain, because I think that will have an irrevocable impact on students right now. There are also other, I can get into some of my personal reasons for why I think that that is very important. The other two factors that I want us to consider in looking at what the cuts are going to be, one is what you're already doing, which is pursuing partners and other kinds of things. And the third is stuff that we can pull back, because I have high hopes that the governor will do something, the state will do something on funding. And I do not want to do anything and make cuts in December that are going to signal to the community something that we can't change then, that will create cascades of other kinds of impacts. I want to make sure that we have stuff that we can pull back in. And that's another reason why I believe that the closing of Kings Mountain off is very important. So I also just personally, I'll be very honest, appreciate all of your speaking. You reiterated what I have felt for a while about the closing of Kings Mountain, but you also added points that I hadn't considered or didn't know about. The long history, the 50-plus years of the multi-generational. I think that those community factors are really important. I'm not a data person. I'm good with numbers. I love numbers. I think we need to look at them. Clearly, we need to balance our budget. Yes, county, we will make our cuts as we need to. Is the county even still here? We have to do that, because then we will get taken over, and then we will have no control over what's going to happen. So, of course, we have to follow the numbers to that degree. But I also believe that where we have discretion, it's really important to use emotion and feeling about what needs to be done. And I don't say that just because I think that's important and I feel emotional about things. That's how other people make decisions when they go about their life. And I think that there are other consequences if we were to close Kings Mountain that would be very detrimental to the district as a whole. And they were brought up earlier tonight. So one of them in particular is the parcel tax and the bonds. I mean, it's an emotional response to vote for something or not. And we can't afford to lose the support and the energy that we have seen in Kings Mountain. So that's an emotional reason, but yet it has real practical implications down the road. And I also think that there's also the emotional reason of closing a school, and then where do those students go? I think we will end up losing students, losing enrollment, and losing money. So again, it's an emotional thing, but it causes actual consequences and financial ones later. You can't disconnect the two. An interesting comment from a friend of mine whose daughters both went to Kings Mountain was talking about her daughter talking about economics and how it's all about numbers, but it's really not. It's about emotional responses to numbers and how you invest in other things. Anyways, that's a kind of side comment. So anyways, those are the three principles that I'd like to propose to the board. And I would like to throw out we take that off the table, because it's taking a lot of energy. It's making people stressed. I've really noticed a lot, and I've been thinking about the last 6 or 7 months about how stressful it is to be in a situation like this for everyone in our district, right? This uncertainty, this idea that things have to get cut. I wish we weren't here. It's not our fault. I mean, I feel bad. I feel like, oh my God, we did something wrong. It's not our fault that we don't have this money. The state has put us in this situation. And I am blessed that we're a part of this amazing community that can pass a parcel tax and that can hopefully find future solutions if the state doesn't do it. But we need to try and reduce our stress as much as possible, because that is then impacting our children. And that is what we do not want to have happen. And so I guess that's where it comes to, for me, for the first criteria for cuts is as far away from children as possible. And that's why I would like to propose to the board, if they're willing, and I don't know where people are standing, that we take that off of the list for now. My comments.
I don't know. This isn't something I was thinking to say tonight, but after hearing comments and people talking tonight, and the every child, every day part being brought up, it actually made me feel, because it's such a great thing for many children, it actually made me feel bad for the kids that could use that type of a setting that don't have a parent that is willing or able to get them there. So it actually kind of made me think it's kind of a sad situation, because it's so great for the kids that are able to either live there or get there, but it's very sad for those kids that would really, benefit from it that can't get up there. And, a bus, we don't have, that's just thinking more money. But that is something, when you guys were talking about it, that was going through my heart. So, I want to bring that up to people too. And although, it's maybe not as much money as we initially thought it would be, there might be a kid at wherever, Granada or Fairlawn, that really needs intervention help, and we could maybe hire a
0.2 FT, full-time employee to help, and that would take money away from that kid too. So when I, as a school board member, think about every child every day, I know it's helping those kids that are there, but I also have to think about how those dollars will affect kids that either need extra help or would benefit from having that kind of environment that aren't able to get it. So, and what we can do for those kids to help them at the school they're at. So as much as I was thinking every child every day and how much it impacts them, I also thought, how are other kids not being able to get that? So those are my thoughts on that. And I think before I'm ready to commit, I just want to go through some of the other cuts and, talk about stuff that we think are easier and see where we are and decide how much we're going to cut. See where we are and see what's left. So that's where I stand on that now. Of course, I don't want to close the school. But I'm glad we've started the conversation because we really haven't talked about this at all. So I'm glad to start the conversation. Just one question for you on the slides, Sean. Middle college numbers, will we have a more firm number on that? It sounds like that wasn't so firm at this point.
As I understand it, it was 7 students. And they were told at the end of last year that the program, it was anticipated by the previous administration that the program would be cut. Am I right on that, Dr. Wade?
We didn't enroll any juniors this year, so only the seniors will finish this year. It was $7,500 per student,
So that cut is about the same. I've never understood whether or not if the students go to the middle college program, if we don't collect the ADA, we lose the ADA. So that's another 10,500, 75. It's $18,000. If you want to think about it as lost to district, really, it's $18,000 per student. Middle college is a phenomenal program, particularly for students who would thrive on a college campus and might not have thrived elsewhere. But again, it might be a wonderful to have and can't afford to have. So that number is pretty clear. And again, we've already sort of made that move.
I just want to go home, and not because it's just because it's so difficult. The reason I'm running and I ran for this board was I have no choice. I have a daughter, and she's very she's below reading. She's been in this district since kinder, and as a parent, I can't go to the private sector. And I just had to tell myself, either I become more involved and try and figure things out. And I wasn't planning to be this involved, but here I am. And now it's like, just kidding. Can I just go home? This is very difficult for me. I myself work for probation, and unfortunately we had a camp up at La Honda. And the setting, everything, just it really does, it helps, and it really does help the children in every way. So I get that. I also was invited to a couple events up at Kings Mountain, and it was funny because I was looking for their parking lot, and I was told that that was it, and I was like, wait, no, but where did people park? So it was interesting, and my daughter just this last summer had a wonderful teacher from Kings Mountain, and she just kept saying, I love summer school, and she loved her teacher. I'm stressing about this, and yet just the other day, Monday, she said, Mom, when can I go to Kings Mountain? And I said, what? She goes, well, 2 of the girls that I go to gymnastics with, they're from Kings Mountain, and my teacher's from Kings Mountain, and I want to go to Kings Mountain. I'm like, I don't even want to think about that right now. And so this is very difficult for me, but I do agree. I have a daughter who is, because it's a homeschool, I have to have her in a school with a lot more students, and I just think maybe I need to look into Kings Mountain. She's struggling. She's an English language learner, which there's none in Kings Mountain. So, I just, it's very difficult, and I do appreciate everybody taking their, I know as a parent, I have a young one at home, I have a full-time job, I have to get up tomorrow at 4:30 in the morning to do it all over again, and everybody's time is very much appreciated. And I'm speechless, and it's very hard for me as well, so I don't know what to say.
I think we're unanimous so far, and this is hard. And I don't think any of us really like much of anything on this list aside from the really incredible work that the staff has done to find business efficiencies that really have no real impact on our classroom. They just impact our bottom line in a positive way. And unfortunately, we might not always like the numbers, as much as I like to think of myself as a data-driven person in terms of decision-making. Emotions are part of that data. So data aren't just numbers, data include emotions. And that's important. And so, yeah, sorry, but this kind of stinks, right? This is not great. I mean, we looked at things on this list, as you've pointed out, Sean, we have counselors, we have assistant principals, which we know make huge difference in the lives of our students, like every single day. We're looking at, let's jump to the middle school, supervision, librarians. I mean, literacy is one of our, it's our first LCAP goal, and we're looking at cutting librarian time, which is where, one of the main places where kids get to kind of learn to love reading, right? Aside from, in addition, of course, to their classroom. We're looking at summer credit recovery suspended, which we're hopeful can burn a little bit of a fire under students to make sure they kind of don't need that, but inevitably there are going to be kids that fall through those cracks. Sports, and we are lucky to have a very well developed sports program, and that helps a lot of our kids too. That's the reality. Middle college, you just spoke to, sorry, I'm just going to go through each one of these, because each one of these hurts. Some more than others, right? But most of them got really hurt, especially on the school list. Community liaisons and attendance clerks, they're all always super busy. It's hard to see, right, how that's gonna work. But the reality is, we can't have all of this. We can't. We just can't afford everything, and it's the job that we have here, and none of us really say, "Yay, yeah." I have so much free time, I'm going to come and make some really hard decisions and feel really bad. It's not fun. But that's the unfortunate reality of where the time and place that we live is our schools are not funded to what we need and what we want for all our kids. And it is every child and every day. And, that is where I'm coming from with some of my concerns and the principles that I look on this. Equity is one of the things at the top of my list. It's excellence in education, sustainability, and equity. And I think that's something that is easy to miss because we often don't have families speaking up that need that help the most. And so that's something that as folks know, we have an additional special meeting on November 21st to get into more detail and more kind of in-depth conversations about these. Now that we've had kind of the formal presentation of the information, we'll digest and come back on November 21st. So hopefully we'll have another full house then again. So I think that's going to be an important conversation where staff will come back with additional data, things like what Amber has suggested and more as we start to dive into some of these more complex ones. Okay, so maybe we don't need to dive into cutting panorama and now using whatever the California Healthy Kids thing is. We don't need to look at the school loop to infinite campus thing because that's more of just an operational, you'll do it, it'll be fine, great. But some of these bigger ticket items school closures, tighter staffing, these bigger, more complex things, we should probably, we'll be taking the time to look at a little bit more in detail on 21st. So those are the kind of things I would, kind of in principle outline is how do we make sure we maintain excellence for every child every day, including the ones that aren't able to be here tonight to speak.
So there are no real questions for me.
I have one more general thing.
I have another question.
I'm not soliciting questions. I was going to make a comment, and I was going to try to give you a direction, to give me a direction. I do want to say that I agree entirely that when you go through the district services and the district-wide cuts, the 1.6 million, I got through that part of the presentation pretty easy. When you get to the school cuts, it gets harder. And having met a lot of the people in the audience tonight who spoke on behalf of Kings Mountain, when I was able to go to them at the parent-teacher organization and they filled the house up there, we talked about these things. I do think that I would agree with the board, and I agree with the community members who spoke tonight, that it is difficult when it is suffering a loss of your identity and your community. And I've been through this before, because in the past district I was at, I had to close a school because of liquefaction, and it was heart-wrenching, even though we knew that the school site was unsafe, because it was a loss of identity. So I guess with the direction that I would kind of ask the board to allow me and my team to do is at the next November meeting, bring sort of another set. Now that we know that the parcel tax, I think we feel pretty good about it, that we would bring another set that winnows it and brings the funnel down even more from 3.8 million to 2.8 million, so that you could get to the 2.5, 2.6 number, so that we could feel confident that we could make enough cuts to get it back into a positive certification, back into a place where we're in a good state of fiscal health, at least for the interim, knowing we may well need to make more cuts going on. But I think I've gotten some information tonight where, and you've heard my values, that I would hope that the board will allow me to bring back so that we could have a deeper discussion about the other items that are easier to talk about, review the other cuts first, as Ms. Alexander brings up. And I did hear from several people, and you heard my own value, that there are some things that I think I had to put on the list because I had to bring that much of a cut because it was our insurance policy if the parcel tax didn't pass. If you would, I would like you to let me funnel this down another $1 million to bring to you, so then we can discuss that at the next meeting.
I just wanted to see, so I can think about it, Lizette, if you have any thoughts around community liaisons and opinions about that, I'd be curious to hear what you'd have to say, if you have anything.
Actually, that was one of my requests for the next board meeting. If we could bring the job descriptions, because from when I'm talking about years ago to the liaisons, what they were doing is very different from what they're doing now. And I really think that we do need community liaisons, especially since this district is over 51% Latino, and it's important. But I also don't think we need to have a liaison just there as another clerk or another just supporting clerk for the office. I think that it's important to have them do what they are there to do, which is help bridge the participation and just the interaction between the families and the school, especially the families who don't speak English and who are, just in disconnect for many reasons, not only by language but culturally, and just really not involved in the schools, which is also very important for student success. So I'd like more of like the job description, because I think it's very important. I know liaisons, in my opinion, and when I was years ago, it was they were very involved in the evenings where it was the ELD parent meetings and the DLACs and the ELACs and things like that. And it's unfortunate because we always need the community to support us, especially when you have kids who are already deficient because of a language. And I would like to see the job descriptions, because I think it is very important to have someone there who speaks Spanish but is also engaging the community and is not there just answering phones and being another secretary, I guess. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. So, but you're just saying you think that they need to not be merged, they need to stand alone would be.
Well, I'd like to see what their current job description is before. I think that's why I think it's important. I'm speaking on what they used to be.
What you know from when you were in school.
And they
Okay,
were,
fair enough.
they would even link them to like food from the food bank and things like that, which is, I know, not happening right now. And the liaison was there too. I remember they were there to fill out forms and help read just different things from school, like the test scores and things like that, and things that they received, even free and reduced lunch applications and things like that. I don't know what their job description is now and what their hours are. I know that in the evening they had to be more flexible for the evening, because that's when these families were available and coming to look for them. So I don't.
So Sean, I just want to make sure, so I do have two questions and then a couple thoughts. Number one, all these numbers, and just remind us, these budget cut numbers, like, so our rough target of 2.5 million does not include any increases for our CUTA staff, correct?
You mean previous re-increases?
I mean current, like projected future. So because we've heard our teachers come several times.
Yes.
Requesting, renegotiation of our contract, including raises for our teachers, which we all know.
Yes.
Well, in my opinion, they well deserve. But though, like, any additional cost for future increases is not reflected in these cuts, so that will be incremental to these cuts.
Indeed, and I would also say that the cuts don't include I'll just say it, administrators and unrepresented staff that did not get the Me Too that CSEA got after CUTA got. So you've still got a class of people, a class of employee in the district that has been left behind and hasn't had their raise. And yet, I would hope that I'll just say it, I would hope the board would take care of those folks before they would then begin talking about raises with others. But it would ultimately be a discussion that I would have with the board about what you're comfortable about authorizing as far as salary and benefits as we go into negotiations. And I think that is all part and parcel of what you would cut. And so I think if it's 2.5 million to be solvent, then you would have to start having cost considerations about, are we going to make more cuts to be able to afford a raise? This is sort of, I hate to say it, a bad choice between programs and salaries. You are going to have two pools of demands. If we run inefficiently, sorry to put it that way, and number crunching, but if we do it that way, and if we don't make cuts, then you don't have money for raises. So it's kind of like a devil's bargain the state makes us do, right? We don't have enough money. If we don't make cuts, we can't afford raises. If we can't afford raises, you can't retain quality staff, and your programs suffer too. It's unfortunate, but yes, none of this includes money for raises. You would have to cut more money, or we would have to get more money to be able to talk about raises.
Thank you. My second question is about, Oh, yes, it's almost 10 o'clock. So we do have a rule whereby we have a 10 o'clock curfew unless we waive that. So do we have a motion to go past our 10 o'clock curfew? Okay, do we have a second? Yes. Okay, second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye, passes 4-0. Thank you very much, Rosie. My second question is with regards to the structural deficit that you've mentioned several times as well, Sean. So in the absence of the state making significant corrections and or the voters choosing to make significant corrections in the funding system for our state, with either of the two propositions next year, that would substantially change our revenue stream. We're looking, can you confirm my understanding? We're looking at a scenario where our costs are forecast to continue to rise at a higher rate than our revenues. And so we're in a situation where we're pretty much constantly making cuts unless something changes, which it hasn't in the last 10 years, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this to the public numerous times, but I always say that we have to say this 7 times in 7 different ways, and I apologize to people who feel like I drone on about the same topic over and over again, but it must be said. State funding, basically, LCAP, local control funding, formula funding, is based on sort of post-recession levels. It has not risen since then. The state then sort of said, oh, you have all this flexibility and you no longer have categorical funding in the same way and you can spend it how you see and do the LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan, and you'll figure out how you want to spend the money. And it's your call. And then they saddled us in 2013 with the same amount of money trying to creep up to recession levels, which they just finally did, thank you, Terry Brown, full and fair funding. But what he did not tell you, and what legislators did not tell you, is that they saddled us with Pension Reform Act, and our costs are continuing to go up. And as soon as we hire our new chief business officer, I know he will be presenting on this, that we will be looking at our pension obligations will continue to rise for the district probably for the next 5 years, and unless the legislators change this. And so what you will see is that we will be in a time of, pessimistically speaking, perpetual cuts. With declining enrollment in the district, you will be in a time of perpetual cuts. They talk about budgets as being a time when boards and the community can discuss their values. You've spoken very clearly tonight as a community about your values, every child, every day, my child, my school. But for the collective, which is what I think Mary Beth was speaking to, this has an impact on every other child. This is a time in Cabrillo when you have a values clarification exercise as a board and a community. What will your community look like this year? What will it look like next year? What will it look like 10 years from now? And because we are in a structural deficit, if we don't clean up the deficit now, you'll be in a world of hurt next year and the year after. You can either make it hard one time and do the $2.5 million in cuts, but it won't be easier unless we get really a lot of money back. The only way we're going to do that is the governor is going to give us more money in the budget in January. I'm not so optimistic about that. Or in November 2020, the dueling tax initiatives bring us a lot more money for education. And then we're funded like the rest of the average in the state, or in the country, excuse me. So this is a daunting process. It is a structural deficit. We do need to make $2.5 million in cuts. I would highly recommend the board do that. You could do less, but then you'll be in a continuing spiral of more cuts over time because you didn't make cuts before, and there's a multiplier effect. I would try to have the board work to make $2.5 million of cuts in December as a round number, and then we'll see if we can reevaluate and restore going forward. I think it's doable. I think it's manageable. I think it's going to hurt. I don't think it's going to be what we're used to. But we have to do something. I think the values are very clear to me from the community, and I think I've heard at least one board member say that they are opposed to closing or consolidating in his schools. And you've heard me recommend that we do not consolidate Fairlawn, View, and Granada because it's just so absurd and so difficult. And I think I agree with Ms. LaFontaine's appraisal that having a school that large and my appraisal that doing it on that size of campus and not having modernized first is a problem. So again, I'd like to be able to bring back another whack at it now that we've had some discussion. Maybe with $1 million cut from this first cut, and bring back the job descriptions for the community liaisons and the attendance clerks to see if we might combine those positions for efficiency and actually save some people some benefits and keep some jobs available.
I just have one thing.
Yeah.
So Sean, if we are going to keep the closing of Kings Mountain on that list, and I don't know what you're going to be proposing in 2 weeks, I would like us to try and put some actual numbers to the unintended consequences of that. And so I think that we need to look at the lack of possibility of passing a parcel tax ever again. I think we need to look at the loss of enrollment. And I think there's some other factors that probably go into that. So I think that of all of the cuts that you're proposing is the most difficult to rescind and has potentially devastating consequences, not just for Kings Mountain community, and appreciate all of you coming and speaking eloquently about your own personal thing, but for the district as a whole, the community, the coastside community as a whole, that will cause us to actually, on a dollars and cents level, lose way more in the future. So I'd like to have some kind of analysis of that.
Yeah, that's fine, and it is a point that Amber's brought up before, is that there is a great amount of PTO contribution to the school for additional staffing. We could look at that and take a deeper dive on Kings Mountain in particular and bring you how that is staffed. The unintended consequences, the community did raise that with me when I went and spoke to them, either of loss, enrollment loss. Clearly, I think it was Marty who talked about this. Marty's still there? Marty and I sort of talked about this that night, and he spoke about it eloquently tonight, which is, if you're looking at $160,000 of savings, which basically is the extra teacher over the ratio, right, the formula, and the cost of putting the lights on and a part-time custodian and your administrative assistant, if you look at that, if you lose 16 kids, what did you gain? You didn't make those savings. So I hear your point loud and clear. We can bring more details, but again, I do think the consolidations and closures are something that I hear is probably not where we're directing.
Well, and one point that was brought up tonight, and maybe it was by you, Marty, was also that loss that then continues, that those children then don't end up going to the rest of our district, which I also think has significant impact on our middle school and our high school.
That's entirely true.
I hadn't thought of that.
If you connect the dots to Tom Williams' demographer report, and you see that we are looking at drops in numbers, again, what we will see, and this will be where the economy of scale starts to falter at the middle school and the high school, it will be more expensive to run. Your cost per pupil at the middle school and the high school is going to go up as you have declining enrollment. You'll have fewer chances for electives, we'll have less money, and you will have fewer electives, less options, and you continue to cut other things. I mean, there is that trickle effect. It is small, but it's kind of like that Ray Bradbury story about someone stepping on a butterfly, right?
And I would encourage you for sure, I think that item in particular needs a far deeper dive, for November 21st. And I would encourage you, Sean, as you're putting that package together, to not start with the conclusion and pull data to support a particular conclusion, but make sure we're approaching this, again, with open minds. We don't know the answer, right? Against any science teachers out there? Yeah, Christy knows, right? So we might have a hypothesis, but the whole point is we go through this process not with a foregone conclusion, yes or no to close this particular school. That's not the objective here. Then we could always find data to support a particular conclusion. That's not our goal. The goal is to understand the landscape, the full landscape, the holistic landscape, all the different considerations, that we should take into account here for all our students.
I would only ask the board give me permission as your superintendent to, knowing that I provided you a $3.8 million menu in case, that you would now let me pull that back a bit, and then we could have the discussion from that pulled back piece. And I think hopefully you'll trust that my decision about the Fairlawn View El Granada consolidation is one that I think we should take off the table at this point.
I'm comfortable with that, but I would ask you to just check in with Kimberly Hines, since she couldn't be here tonight and couldn't participate in the conversation. Just make sure she doesn't have any major concerns, just as a courtesy, because it is a big factor.
And I just want to go for a majority of the board. Does the majority of the board feel the same way?
Yeah.
Is the majority of the board okay with me bringing back a smaller cut list?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
With a deeper dive on some of these topics that have come up, the community liaisons, I'd like to take a look at the tighter staffing to just pressure test some of these hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential savings before we kind of bank on those coming through. A little bit, if, I don't know how you want to go about it, if it's examples of basically pressure testing that we could really save that much for some of those. Those would be the ones there. The same in the schools. The district ones are a little bit more straightforward. Maybe a little bit more detail on the transportation, and just have a little bit more discussion of what that would look like what lines would be cut and what would that potential impact be on our students.
Thank you.
I also, if we could, I'd like to talk about the dean. So I actually met the dean. I went to Cunha, and one of the things that really amazed me, it's no secret, I'm big on ELD. I was an ELD student myself. I think I graduated the district with not even being reclassified, so here I am. But I'm big on ELD, and one of the things that I saw her do was she was in class and she met with the students and she wrote up a contract, and they talked about where they're lacking in the English language development, what the goal is, how they're going to reach the goal, and then take that home. And honestly, being that I think the district can improve in ELD and just instruction and support, I think that that's really major. And I'd like to see, more on like the kind of work that she's done, and has that even helped? I mean, is there data to kind of support the work that she's doing with ELD students? Because I think that's really important. And just having her meet with them and making them accountable since middle school, I think is very important, because it's unfortunate. I mean, by the rate my daughter's going, I don't even think she's going to graduate. I mean, I don't think she's going to even be reclassified by the end of 5th grade. So we're praying, and I've done Disneyland incentives, but I mean, after so many hours and after school reading clubs and just doing as much as I can, I mean, I don't know what else to do, but just be patient as a parent. So I'd like to see more of the work that she does before, I mean, because she's on the cutting table, but I'd be interested to see the results and the kind of data that there is.
And if I wind up removing it from the cuts list in my funnel, I'll share that with you anyway. But I would say, just to the point of the reclassification, please know that Dr. Patia is working currently on trying to get us into best practices with reclassification, because I think in the past, I know that we just met with a teacher at the high school, Graham Westwood. Yeah, Graham Westwood, and so ELD chair at the high school. So we are looking into that. But again, if we bring this back on the cuts list, I would certainly bring back some more data on that.
I was going to add the same thing for the ones on top. I assume you won't be bringing back some of the ones that you mentioned that you were not in favor of already, in terms of the high school assistant principal counselor at the high school, at Half Moon Bay High School in Cunha, but as well. But if you do happen to bring them back, some further discussion around the implications for those communities would be, I think, important, if you do.
I just want to say that it is heartening and empowering that the board would give me the ability to take this $3.8 million menu and say, Sean, why don't you bring us a course that you find more palatable? I will say that I've had the experience in the past as an assistant superintendent where it was not my choice, and staff did not feel empowered and felt like the board were going to make the decisions. And so ultimately, you're the decision makers, but I do appreciate that you let my staff and I funnel this down and bring the expertise, especially now that it looks like the parcel tax will prevail.
Well, and if we don't agree with you, you'll probably hear about it too.
I reckon.
I just had one comment, and I don't think this is possible, especially with what I've heard tonight. But I just want to throw it out there, when you're thinking about how can we do things differently. Is there any kind of a scenario where Kings Mountain might be able to put somewhere else on another campus in a small group of buildings that they do everything? I mean, I get the sense that it's special because it's up on the hill and it's in the woods. And I think that's why it's special. And I don't think this is an option. To still keep that small school feeling that has helped kids that aren't thriving in a big school environment. It would also open it up to kids that aren't thriving, whose parents aren't willing or able to get them up there, and then maybe there would be a few kids. I mean, I think there was more kids at the school in the past, and it still had that special feeling. Maybe then it would at least be accessible to a few more kids that might be struggling in a big school environment that aren't able to get there. And I doesn't sound to me like it's a possibility, but I feel like I should at least bring it up because we need to look at everything.
Thank you very much. All right, so if there are no further comments or questions on the topic of the financial update, then we'll proceed to, well, we could also open it up to any comments or questions on the FCMAT contract, if anybody has any. It costs nothing. I don't know if Sean mentioned that. I just wanted to point that out. So it's free consultation.
Again, because we were issued a letter of lack of going concern by the county office that basically said that we need to have an analysis using 20 factors from the FCMAT's fiscal health risk analysis. We very much look forward to this because they have some great tools that could tell us other places where we may be out of whack in the district or may be able to make savings in the district, and also to be addressed some governance or operational deficiencies that we may have because of policies, what have you. They're an independent contractor. They maintain insurance. There's a hold harmless agreement. They come in, they help us. It costs us nothing. The state has an allocation for special districts like us that are in budget crisis.
Just a follow-up comment too, that we unfortunately are not going to get that report prior to our December decision, so that, we'll get it, I think January was what you said?
When I spoke to John Von Flew, and he called me last week, or I think, and we set up this time, yes, they will come in next week, they will do interviews, they will take documents from us, they will look at our information, and then they will not present to us in January, so it's part of that double, triple whiplash. We talk about cuts, then in January you have a budget thing, a budget up revision for the budget proposal from the governor, so maybe you can hope up for more money, and then you got to wait till the May revision to know if you really have it, and then in January FCMAT will say, but wait, there's more, you should be cutting here, or you should be doing this. So yes, it's other information.
And keeping in mind that this isn't pretty much a continuous process of cuts. Yet, again, when our costs are rising at a faster rate than our revenues, we're kind of in a perpetual cycle of cuts until and unless something changes, probably not in the near future. Sorry, I keep getting told I need to speak more to the mic. So I think that it will still be very informative because even January, we're even on your flow chart you had, we're pretty much as soon as we finish this short-term round of budget cuts, we're starting to do more longer-term strategic planning and financial solvency, sustainability planning. So I think this will be incredibly informative to that end.
Yeah, I mean, our goal will be to continue to work on efficiencies, solar generation, good use of the bond per the bond language so that we can save on operational costs. We will look at both savings and at cuts, and we can hope for more money either at the local level or at the state and federal level.
Great, thank you. So if there are no further questions on the proposed contract, we will proceed to vote en masse. Motion. I don't know if we have to do a motion to approve?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody? Okay. So moved, second? Somebody? Second. Okay, Lizette second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye, passes 4-0, thanks. Okay. All right, so we're done with item 11. Thanks, everybody. Item 12, discussion items. This seems there are none. Item 13, communications, starting with board members.
Do you want to start?
Okay, I can start. I'm just super happy to be part of this community. I'm very happy about Measure I. and all the community that supported it. I am super happy to see everyone here tonight. I've been getting emails like crazy on my school board account, and I'm super happy to hear from the public. I'm glad the public is really engaged with what's going on, and I want to hear what people think, so I'm very appreciative of that. I've never noticed so many people being so involved with what's going on with the schools, and I think it's great. And I think, Sean, you're part of that too. You've been really making an effort to go out to the community and inform them of what's going on too, so I think that's part of it. I hope we keep that up because I think it's been great. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the joint meeting we had with the City of Half Moon Bay. Sean and I and Sophia had a meeting with the city manager, and the city, a couple members of the city council last week, recently. It's all a big blur. And talked about ways we can partner. There's so much overlap in our area in particular with the city because, you know, a lot of things we don't have public facilities for lots of things, so the public ends up using our facilities, and just talking about how we can be efficient with that, how we can help the community, how the community can help us, just to open up this dialogue with the city that we hadn't really had before, and make it official. So it's going to be a public meeting. People showed up for it. It was the first one we had. I think it was informative to people. Someone in the audience actually suggested, you know, we videotape it. They thought it was worthwhile. And we're going to be doing these meetings a few times, at least a couple times a year. I also want to thank the city hosted us this time, so they were very nice about that. So I just thought it was a really nice start to look at some ways to partner and just think about new ways we can help each other and just increase our impact. For instance, grants were brought up and how much easier it is to apply and get grants if you have multiple city entities on those grants and things along those lines. So I think it's a win-win, and I'm happy to be a part of that, and I encourage everyone to keep track of those meetings as well, because I think it's going to be great.
I was going to talk about the big lift, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm just trying to digest everything. I'm not feeling it. I'm like, I've been collaborating and helping with the big lift, and there is some great stuff happening throughout even though I can't. I'm still like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm having a hard time. But yeah.
So I'm going to go back to my happy moment. I'm going to go back to that spontaneous act of joy. Just real quick, a giant thank you to this whole community. I mean, I don't know 5,000 people, but 5,000 plus voted yes on Measure I, and I am so appreciative for every single one of them. They're not all parents. They don't have a vested interest in schools and that their kids are there and that's their reason, but they care enough about public education, about this coast, and about all of the children that are all our children. And so for me, that was just really wonderful. And I did, right at 8:06 when the results came out, gave a squeal of, it's 74%, which, having been involved in the last 5 campaigns, is just incredible and really shows the wonderful job that our leadership team, and we have one of them here, Jackson was here earlier, Brianna, thank you so much for your hard work, and sent out an email. We'll hopefully at some point do a community appreciation for all of them. Would be great just to really say thank you, because that was a lot of work. It takes an amazing amount of work to get all of those votes out, to remind everybody, to keep things flowing. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I thank everybody. So that was a wonderful moment, and I have a couple ideas for things that I'd like to do moving forward. I don't think they cost any money. One is an environmental committee. I've talked to Sean about this, so I just want to raise this during my open comments. So at some point, if we want to talk about it as a board, figure out the formation. But I've been talking about it with folks, and one of the great things about doing the outreach for Measure I is that you'd end up speaking with people, and I'd say, hey, later we're going to talk about how you want to be involved in this committee. So what we're envisioning right now, but I'm sure it'll change, is kind of a committee that will look at both our facilities and how they can be built more environmental, as well as our curriculum, and look at what we already have and what we do. And Diane, with some of the stuff that you brought tonight, of course, is a part of that, but there are other elements of what AP Environmental Science and what they're doing at different elementary schools, and we can look at those things and how do we help them to do more of that, because it's such an integral part of our coast and our community, as well as wanting to respond to the 5th graders from Granada who came last spring, and that's been on my mind ever since. How do we respond to that and engage them so that we can make sure that our recycling and our other programs and through those actual actions. So I'd like that would be the encompass of that committee, so I'd just like to bring that up. And the other thing that came up with was senior outreach, and I had a lovely meeting with Judy Macias from the Village of the Coast Side, and I just think that there's really an opportunity there to kind of have communication out, but also collaboration, and it's a part of that amazing community that we have here. I mean, seeing Alma Fletcher here tonight, and she was integral with the Measure E and on the Kings Mountain, helping to pass that up there, and to see her still involved, and she was a teacher previously, and the retired folks on the community, on the coast, that are still active and engaged and involved. And I'd like to create some kind of formal exchange of information so that they know more what the district is doing, and so that also we can maybe create some opportunities for volunteering or mentoring or other kinds of things. So I think there's so many amazing life lessons that seniors can provide to everybody, and I think that creating more of a structure so that we have that would be really amazing. I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So again, thank you everyone for Measure I. I really appreciate it, and just want to keep in mind, we already kind of discussed this, but nobody wants to make cuts, and clearly we need to, but let's also keep an optimistic viewpoint. The numbers always change, and they have gotten better in the past, and we can potentially go back to our community if we keep things in an even keel and keep moving forward in a positive way. So I don't want us to be thinking that we are necessarily going to be in a system of perpetual cuts, because that is not a place for anybody to live in. So I just want to keep that positive outlook moving forward. Thank you.
Clearly, I had my moment of joy as well on Tuesday night. It was somewhat brief, because then reality does sink in, and it's sad, and none of us want to be here. We're not alone, as Tom spoke to earlier, and as our team and colleagues with the Coastsiders of Better Education Funding have been working with others, and not only the Bay Area, but just in terms of enlightening our community about what's happening across the state of California. I think it's clearly we have a lot of company out there, and it's the most unfortunate thing is who suffers most is the kids, and particularly the kids that are already suffering in various ways. So it is a tough time, unfortunately, and I think one thing that I've always maintained since I moved here almost 20 years ago as well, probably around the same time as Christy, is there's something unique about this community. We have these challenges, but there's something unique about us, which probably comes from our seclusion, comes from just the history and the multi-generational aspects of many of our families. But I feel like when we have these crises, was it like the PG&E? By the way, that since our last meeting, I think that we had those several PG&E outages we've kind of forgotten about. But through all those times, through budget, funding, I really think of it as like a funding crisis, right? Is really what it is. Through all of this, through Measure I, we come together, right? We figure it out, and within a span of 2 days, things get turned around and things get done when this community comes together. I think that's something really unique, that's special, that not everyone's lucky enough to have. So I'm really, really grateful for that, and I think that showed in the 4,000, 5,000 people that voted for Measure I, whether or not they had kids in their own personal vested interests. It's thinking about that bigger whole, which was incredibly encouraging. So that was our first step, is making sure we were able to renew that modest parcel tax. Let's be clear. now we're in the next phase, is we're trying to get that second line closer to that first line, right? Revenues are slightly more stable. Now we got to get kind of our costs down a little bit. And then we go into that phase of longer term strategic planning that Sean has talked about, and looking at that process. I think there are two key things that are, core to this or critical to this. One is the collaborative leadership that we've seen not only in the district from the staff and in the classrooms, but also with our community, and the incredible support and partnership we've had of individuals and groups in our community. Like, our schools are the heart of all our whole coast side, right? And that's been essential. So that meeting we had with the city council was fantastic. There was record show up, I think, at the legislative. We had our assemblyman Mark Berman here, and Amber and Brianna and everybody got like 1,000 people. Well, it's not quite 1,000, but it's a lot of red out there, and he clearly got the message. I think that education funding is a top priority for us in the coast. So that was. Again, kudos to the tireless leadership of our community members. Great conversations. I was able to go to the Brews and Views recently with Sean and Corinne, who I saw earlier from CEF. And we had some great conversations with Butte County superintendent there and their folks around, and a gentleman who was there from the 49ers that does a lot of philanthropic work for schools in the Bay Area and beyond. And again, just another example of how you get these multidisciplinary groups coming together to do what's best for kids, despite the challenges. And Butte County certainly, as folks know, had some pretty big challenges over the past couple of years. Again, to Sean and the staff for bringing together this, just information and bringing to light a lot of opportunities that we have to make things better for our students. So it's hard, but I hate to say it, but we can do this. I know we can do this. It's not going to be easy, but I'm really grateful for the people in this community that can stand up and see that broad view and that long view. And I think that's our role here, right? Our role, the board, is policy. It's not what happens tomorrow in so-and-so's classroom. It's what happens over the next 5 to 10 years in our schools and our community. So I'm grateful to be able to have this community to work with for that. We don't have a student board member, so we will go to Dr. McFetridge.
Real quick, I already sort of said my piece before my presentation about how grateful we are about Measure I and how that helps us. I am optimistic. I do tend to be a pragmatist and a realist, but I am optimistic about the future because you are a phenomenal community. I do want to make a couple announcements. Tonight, the board has the opportunity to approve my recommendation to hire Mr. Jesus Contreras as our next Chief Business Officer. Mr. Contreras has decades of experience in education and roles as a teacher, school administrator, consultant with the California Department of Education, executive director at Dixon Unified School District, and a coordinator at San Mateo County Office of Education. Jesus is bilingual. He's bicultural. He was born and raised in Mexico, but has worked for decades here in the United States in public education here in California. And I know we are very lucky to have had the opportunity to have interviewed him for this important district role, which we have not had a CBO, an official CBO, since my arrival. So I'm thankful and grateful, and I just think that Jesus Contreras will be a tremendous asset to Cabrillo Unified School District as we work our way toward fiscal health. And will you please join me in welcoming Jesus Contreras? And what a great way to get an introduction to the fiscal health of the district, Jesus. Yeah. And I can't wait for you to arrive. Jesus will join us at the end of the month. Bless you. Thank you. Meanwhile, please join me in also welcoming our new family engagement, early childhood, and special project supervisor. And I don't know if she's still here. Oh, it's so sad. She was here earlier. I'm going to announce her anyway. Many of you will know our very own Rosalva Segura has been hired to fill this important role. of family engagement, early childhood, and special project supervisor. A goal of our district is to increase our level of support around family engagement and early childhood education. And with her extensive experience as a leader in our community's migrant education and preschool programs, Ms. Segura is the most qualified person for this role, and we thank her for considering serving CUSD in this way. Rosalva Segura has worked for many years here in CUSD, and we were delighted to interview and hire her when we were able to create this position with categorical dollars and big lift funds at no cost to our general fund, my shameless plug. And if you would, even though she spent most of the meeting here, please join me in welcoming Rosalva Segura and again, Jesus Contreras. Rosalva, I hope you watch it on television. And that would conclude. I could go on and on, but I've gone on and on.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to consent items number 14. Do we have a motion to approve? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye, passes 4-0. Okay, action items, item 15, action items. 15A, adopt resolution number 2619 endorsing, November 14, 2019 as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day.
I'll just speak to this really briefly. Ruby Bridges was born in New Orleans, was a civil rights leader and activist and organizer. Dr. Wade, were you going to speak to this? Can I go ahead? And I've met Ruby Bridges. She is in Alameda, where I formerly was the superintendent. We have a school named after Ruby Bridges. She is a civil rights icon, fabulous woman. Was one of the first African-American children to integrate in American schools. And has continued that, and she has a foundation. And San Mateo County Office of Education has created a resolution whereby we can endorse November 14th as Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day. Of course, this is great for us because we want kids to walk to school. We want kids to bike to school. We want families to walk and roll to school. And we also want to remember Ruby Bridges, civil rights icon, so staff recommends adoption of the resolution.
All right, do we have a motion to approve? Lizette, second? Any questions or comments? If not, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Oh, it is a resolution. Thank you very much. Roll call vote. Okay, we'll start with Freya. Aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you, Rosie. Again. Okay, item 15B, approve the Half Moon Bay High School Agriculture and Natural Resources Department course of study and 2019 to 2024 5-year plan.
Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you, Diane Santoni, and the high school team that has really worked hard for 75 years in building this plan. And in 2018, we did have the boosters and the ag department. They formed a 5-year plan, and they added and edited the plan. As you see, Diane has done amazing work in applying for grants and growing the program. And so this board memo is asking that the Board of Trustees approve the course of study for the 2019-2024 5-year plan as presented to you tonight.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Comments or questions? Seeing as there are none, we will proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Thanks. Okay. Oh yeah, item 15C, approve extension request for single plan for student achievement SIPSA from January 2020 to June 2020.
This last year, the California Department of Education is submitting, and it should be approved by the California Department Board of Ed, a new LCAP plan and structure. As they planned the LCAP new framework, they also worked on the alignment of a single plan for student achievement. And as you know, our LCAP goes to the board every June, and our SIPSAs typically will go to this board I checked last year, it ranged from December all the way to February. And as this new LCAP format is approved, it is the state's goal to align the goals of the SIPSAs directly to the LCAP goals. And in order for us to do this, it is a challenge for our site administrators to wait 6 months and approve single plan for student achievement goals, and then wait for LCAP approval 6 months after. And so we are requesting the board to shift the approval of the SIPSA goals 6 months, and it varied after doing the research. I believe last year you approved elementary, then middle, and then high school at different, during a 3-month span. And in order to do this, we ask that 18-19 SIPSAs are extended for 6 months, and that you consider us jointly approving LCAP and SIPSAs in order to make sure that our site administration and our school site councils have the time to really grow and learn as we develop and realign our LCAP goals for this year.
Great, thank you, Leticia. Thank you. So motion to approve? So moved. Second? Second. Comments or questions? Just a quick question, make sure I understood. So basically then the approval for SIPSAs you're proposing is at the same time as LCAP?
So we'll need to save a lot of reading time over the weekend in June.
Let's
yes.
do more.
Smaller than that.
Yes.
Succinct.
It works.
We like that. Succinct.
It's a lot less confusing sometimes actually when everything happens at the same time, from my view anyway. Okay. If there are no further comments or questions, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you, Leticia. Okay. Item 15D, approve Form J13A, request for allowance of attendance due to public safety power shutdown on October 9th, 10th, 2019.
Thank you. We bring to the board tonight a memo that allows for attendance, a waiver for attendance during our recent power outage on October 9th and 10th. We did not see significant, I think, attendance issues. We saw about 30% of our students who did not come. We checked with those folks to see the reasons why they didn't come to school that day. So we have verified and are asking for reimbursement through this memo. So we ask for your approval.
We have a motion to approve. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Comments or questions? Seeing as there are none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.
All right, next item 15E, approve resolution number 2719 to designate authorized representatives of CUSD as signatories effective November 7th.
And this is the last of the action items, and basically this resolution, wait, am I seeing this? Yes. To designate authorized representatives of Cabrillo Unified School District. This would allow signatories to remain the same. James Crawford was our interim CBO. He left last month, and Jesus Contreras is now officially approved with the consent item as our new Chief Business Officer, and this will allow him to sign along with others on cabinet for budget items, and we recommend approval.
Okay, motion to approve? Second?
A second.
Questions or comments? Seeing as there are none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor resolution, we'll go roll call vote. Starting from my right, Freya? Aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. All right.
Everybody. When does he start?
Mr. Contreras, I think the 22nd, November 22nd. So Mr. Contreras had some obligations at San Mateo County Office of Education, and we thank him to coming to us right before the Thanksgiving break. I'll be here. I'll take you to lunch, Jesus.
We'll have work for you.
Potluck lunch, right?
Is he gonna be around for our special meeting or next?
I don't know if Mr. Contreras will be able to come to the special meeting on
the 21st.
On the 21st.
That's fine. Oh, yeah.
Oh, he'll make it. You know, if I may, point of privilege, I do just want to thank all our administrators for always coming to these board meetings. Oh, Jason, you were here. You could have done the Ruby Bridges piece. I'm so sorry. I want to thank all our administrators for being here. It's not common that you get all your administrators in a board meeting. This is new to me, so thank you, number one. It is really a community feel. And number two, I just want to give a special shout out to Ms. Amy McVicker, who has stepped in to serve for Fairlawn View right now, currently, because of another administrator not being able to attend. So thank you for that, and I just wanted to bring that up.
Cheers to that, Sean, for sure. Thank you, everybody. It is about that time, isn't it? With that, we'll move to item 16, future board agenda items, board reorganization installation in December, approval of first interim budget report, financial overview update, and board action on potential budget cuts. And item 17, future events, dates, requests, November 11th, Veterans Day. Don't forget, all sites are closed on Monday. November 18th, funding presentation at Moonridge Family Housing on Half Moon Bay, 6 p.m. November 21st, as mentioned earlier, a special governing board meeting here in the district office boardroom at 7 p.m. November 25th through 29th, Thanksgiving recess, no school. November 28th and 29th, Thanksgiving holiday, all sites closed. December 3rd, Big Lift Collaborative meeting, the District Office Boardroom at 3 p.m. Also December 3rd, Chamber Education Committee meeting, District Office Boardroom, 4 p.m. December 11th, Collaborative Cunha Half Moon Bay High School Mega Concert at Half Moon Bay High School. I'll have to find out about that. And December 12th, the regular Governing Board meeting, District Office Boardroom at 7 p.m. We will not recess to closed session, and we have a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
No, wait, we need a second though. Okay, are we sure we're all gonna vote aye? Because aye. All right.